Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Phoenix Gaming. We learned a lot from Luca about how to play Brass Birmingham as we reviewed the Brass Birmingham ring final, but I wanted to actually talk about the semifinal. So the only thing I know about this game is that Luca winds up winning and advancing to the finals of the tournament. So you might be like, wait, what do you mean by the semifinal? This was the random semifinal that was assigned to these four players. So we've got Jeff here, who actually I guess David is first as white, it looks like. So David is first as white. David was the ring winner of the Ticket to Ride tournament. Levi on the bottom left in yellow was the winner of the Terraforming Mars tournament. Jeff on the top left in purple was the winner of the Wingspan tournament. And then we had Luca, who we saw play second in the Brass tournament, but the reason that he's here is because he ended up winning the Azul tournament and then just lucked into playing this as his game here, which will end up going well for him. But I wanted to take the lessons that we had from that conversation with Luca and see how we could kind of assess the game state, how the game flow is going. So without any further ado, let's rock out and start kind of looking at these things here. So as the players are kind of assessing their cards here, the first thing that I know we should be looking at is what do the external markets look like? And there's pretty interesting choices here. Actually, I'll come back to that. It looks like David's taking his first action, discarding a card, and maybe taking a loan. I think I see him reaching for some cash. We have in the northwest off of Stoke-on-Trent 2 cotton mills. So there's a cotton mill industry very heavily focused in the north. So if someone is going that cotton strategy, they're going to be stuck in the north, certainly in the canal era, and then later they're just going to need to make sure to connect. They're playing in the rail era. Over in the northeast, off of Derby, I don't know the name of the external markets, so I'll just call them by their markets otherwise. But off of Derby there, we see that there is that's the pottery market. So there's a decent chance pottery, as I understand it, is pretty. Your first level pottery goes away at the end of the canal era. So people tend to avoid using pottery at the beginning of the game. So there's a decent chance people won't be playing on the northeast side of the board. On the western side of the board, off of Colebrookdale there, we see some boxes or manufactured goods. Off of Birmingham, we've got manufactured goods. And then all the way in south in Gloucester is a wild, which again, Gloucester is connected to Worcester, which is another cotton mill. So this feels like a board that's pretty good for a cotton strategy and fine for boxes strategy. Boxes are manufactured goods. Like I think they like that central Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Walsall arc because they can kind of mix their industries with their manufactured goods. So those kinds of hybrid strategies there. But I think we're going to see in this canal era is very few people playing in the northeast. I think there's not a lot of goodies up there. And so we'll see David here open up with the loan right at the beginning. And then Levi will go ahead and grab those first 2 iron at 2 apiece, dropping $4 in order to develop. And I didn't see what he developed because unfortunately we got a camera. We're going to miss parts of David's board and parts of Levi's board. Maybe we'll see in a moment, or maybe he hasn't pulled them off yet. But my guess is that he's pulling off. He must have pulled off 2 cotton mills because I didn't see his beer being removed. So I think he's pulled off 2 cotton mills. He's decided he wants to lean into that cotton strategy. Otherwise, we'd see some empty pieces there. So I'm pretty sure that's what Levi did. So he's trying to stake that claim early because as we learned from Luca last time, even on a board like this where cotton mills seem to be a little bit favored, it can be very tough to play cotton if there are multiple players going for it. Now, I don't know what the experience levels of the other players at this table are, and I don't know that everybody necessarily buys into the only one player should be in the cotton strategy. So it'd be interesting to see if there becomes a little bit of contention for that. But certainly developing a way to cotton and then not doing something with it seems like it'll be punishing in the long run. Jeff here goes ahead and takes a loan as well. We're generally not going to see what cards folks have discarded because it looks like they're discarding into various areas. So we're just going to play like we have no idea what sort of card options are. Although fortunately for us with this camera angle, we might get a little bit of insight into David and Levi's hand, although I can mostly just see colors and length of names. So I'm going to have to guess that, David's holding a blue Stoke-on-Trent there because that looks like it's 3 words on one card. So I'll guess it's a Stoke-on-Trent, but I don't have any better Hawkeyes than the rest of you. So not sure exactly what I would say about that. Looks like they're doing a double check on Luca's board to make sure he's got all the right tiles there. I'm not sure if maybe they've dropped something. Maybe he's missing a beer or something like that. Yeah, there's a tables panic. And if they've dropped a red piece, look at that red carpet in the background. They're going to be in trouble here trying to find that extra thing. Although I think this is fortunately one of those things you could probably just stick a canal under there and get a sense of, oh yeah, it's supposed to be this piece, and pretty quickly fix that. I mean, they also probably have multiple copies of this game. What a hilarious way for us to start with a good old component scramble, as our judge runs off to get that extra piece there. So for the other 3 players, like I said, I don't really know what their level of experience is in Brass Birmingham. I know that they all did some practice the prior evening, but it's not clear to me whether this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is their second or third game they've ever played, or Levi being a Terraforming Mars player, I wouldn't be surprised if he's played a dozen or so games of this. Jeff, I know, is a player who I think would play games like this, but that's not necessarily what his home group is like. I know Jeff a little bit more at this stage, and from what I've seen him commenting and joking about Brass Birmingham, it doesn't seem like a game that he has played a ton, but he's just really sharp. So we'll see if he can leverage that in some way. It looks like Luca here is going to drop $6 to pick up 2 iron, and he's going to remove those 2 base coal. I actually really hope that it was a coal tile that he was missing. The judge ran off to get the coal tile, and then he immediately developed it away. That would be trolling at its absolute finest. So we're going to rearrange our turn order here, and we're now at this stage where David has the opportunity to play an early iron if he wants to, immediately get $10 back because it's 3-3-2-2 for the 4 iron. If he wants to build out of essentially any of those external markets up into Derby, into Birmingham, or into Coalbrookdale. I find that in a vacuum, the Derby or Birmingham iron markets are kind of the nicest to start off with for 2 reasons, and it depends on what the external markets are. But one is that Coalbrookdale has a bunch of industries in it. So when you open up Coalbrookdale, it really benefits other players who didn't need to build that link to the external market. Whereas Birmingham and Derby essentially only have the one industry. So you're kind of only helping people with their mid-game plays of the manufactured goods rather than the kind of early, industry stuff to offset the loans that they're taking and the income that you get from those. But instead, we're going to see him using that Stoke-on-Trent card. I'm going to assume that he's going to play an iron up here. This is actually pretty bomb for whoever ends up, I guess, Levi right now, right? Because Levi now doesn't need to work to develop a network into the Northwest, where he's going to start dropping cotton mills. So really, really conveniently for him, David might not have had the cards to open in any other, an iron from any other external market, which I think is kind of a default play, it seems like, from this position where it's you've taken a loan in the first turn, you're earlier in the turn order, and people did indeed use those develop actions to pull iron off of that market there. And this is going to give David that $10, which essentially rebates this for free, upping his income by 3, which completely offsets his loan there. Just a really nice cash grab with a couple points attached to it, if he does indeed keep that market till the end of the round. But like I said, I think this is, of the external markets, the worst external market that he could have opened from, because it benefits Levi by a fair margin, to allow him to move into cotton up there without having to really contest it. Like, I think that, I'll leave it at that. So that was David's 2 actions linking in that. And then we're going to go to Jeff here. And Jeff, I would imagine, is going to pretty much snap up some very cheap iron. I guess it's a 2. It's not the cheapest that it could be, but snapping up 2 iron here for a cost of 4 seems like a pretty good prospect. And then he could develop into, anything he wanted to, but beer is just sort of, it seems like, always the safe option. Almost every single seat has use for beer, and you generally want to avoid those tier 1 industries, those canal era industries, because by playing the ones that stick around past the canal era, you've essentially doubled the victory points on them. So you'll often, it's viable to play those tier 1 industries. They get you generally a higher amount of income. You don't have to develop them in order to get to the process there, so they're slightly more action efficient, but the victory point efficiency is just so much higher of building those industries that are going to stick around because they count double. Not only that, but they contribute to your network going into the second age and where you can start in that second age, which makes a really big difference. Today's libations, by the way, are sponsored by Monument Brewing. We're drinking an affogato here, which is a milk stout with coffee, which is positively delicious thanks to my partner and her brief recent visit to Baltimore. Jeff's doing the very deep thinking hand management thing here. We're certainly talking about a gameplay, certain level of stakes for players. And if this is one of the highest stakes games that any of these players are playing. And if you are not well versed in this game, making sure that you don't make just a very small, clumsy mistake that's going to make you miserable, is going to be a huge bummer here. Interesting. Okay, so Jeff opens up coal on stone here. Coal on stone. And then is going to connect that, it looks like, to the external market. I don't love this. He's going to immediately convert that coal and flip that tile over, giving him early income. It's going to offset his loan right off the bat. And I think it's actually going to give him 4 bumps on the income track. So he'll start earning income as well. But he only gets $1 and $1 back. I don't think that's the place you want to be when placing coal mines at the beginning of the game. And now Jeff's going to be network link locked to that northern location there. And again, this is very good for Levi, who can now build in another location without having to worry about essentially building those links himself if he's going into cotton here, which he already kind of signaled that he has. Also, even better for Levi, iron remains pretty cheap, so he can kind of just continue developing here. Frankly, I wonder if Levi's turn could legitimately just be develop, spend $10, eat the iron, push all the way through the cotton, and then develop level 1, either iron or coal, depending on what he wants to accomplish, or maybe if he wants to get into the beer game or something. But that's a lot of early develops for the cotton player, and he has the money, I believe, at this point in time. We can't see his money, but he's only spent the 4 from the beginning. He starts with 17, so he should have enough to just double develop here and lean crazy heavy into his cotton game. I wonder with Jeff's play if he's thinking, hey, by playing an early coal mine, all I do is I leave myself open in terms of industries. I get to kind of watch how the game settles out. I can decide where I'm going to develop later. I think the thing that I just am skeptical about is that networking component up top, sort of being trapped up there unless people build in the other regions. And maybe he's holding on to a bunch of cards that let him, teleport to Birmingham and teleport to Colebrookdale and all of that stuff. And so by holding on to those cards, as soon as Luca maybe starts playing down there, he can then kind of just warp on down there and get involved in multiple parts of the board. Again, that canal link's probably going to be worth a couple of points as well. But yeah, it's not like he wants to build in Stoke-on-Trent. Like, boxes in Stoke-on-Trent are really bad in the canal era because there's just no way, maybe not no way, but it's really unlikely that any boxes up in the north there could be sold in the west or the south. It's just too far connection-wise. So building those manufactured goods, I'm going to keep calling them boxes, up north, I think is going to be a bit of a fool's game at this stage. By the time you get to the rail era, you can essentially just build anything, and probably they'll end up connecting at some point just because the railroads are worth so many points. Everyone's incentivized to do that, and even if no one does it for you, you do it yourself and score a handful of points. That seems kind of like a no-brainer there. Levi's thinking long and hard about this, so I wonder what he's stuck on, because like I said, I imagine that this is a double develop. Maybe he did not really anticipate the coal play, and so he had kind of done some other plan. Like he might be wanting to get some early income as well, but I think with the opportunity to just grab some, it's not the cheapest iron, but it's not expensive either. Right off the bat, like, seems good to me. And, given that, again, I think Luca has the most experience in this table and he was willing to play 3 for develops for iron, that might be the case. Or, Levi's just really considering the hand management components here, which is probably a little bit trickier in his position. Oh, here we go. Okay. So he's opening up in Derby. Which, like I said, I think is a region that is just like not valuable up there. Now, he could end up building cotton mills up there, but my guess is that he's not. His cotton mills haven't been developed yet, so my guess is he's building an iron there. Yeah. To me, I could be wrong, and maybe I'm missing like a totally different strategy, but to me, this is demonstrating that Levi maybe doesn't have a ton of experience with Brass Birmingham. And as someone told him, flipping iron early is really important. It's a lot of points. And it is. It gets you a lot of stuff. But I can't help but wonder if he maybe is stuck in a little bit of like advice land when you're playing a game only for the second time ever and people gave you advice and then you slept for 2 hours or whatever. And kind of a little bit narrowly focused on that, because I think he could have just easily scooped up that iron, developed into some cotton, and been completely happy. Luca here is going to be ecstatic about that. He's going to scoop up. I thought Levi was going to do. I don't see any reason why Luca wouldn't do 4 develops at this point for the price of 0.011. Yes, that's going to flip Levi's iron industry, but that's going to happen at some point anyway. I think there's absolutely no reason why he shouldn't do this. The other thing too is that those spots in Derby for cotton mills, in theory, actually could kind of connect around. It's a little bit of a pain because in Black Country you really need mostly railroads, but you can go down to like Burton and Trent and then connect canals across that way. So in theory, those 2 spots for cotton mills could have been Levi's 3rd spots if he was going for 3. I mean, I guess Leek is probably his ideal situation is like Leek, Stoke-on-Trent, and Stone for 3 cotton mills if he's going a cotton mill strategy. And then you just ship them up north and you get a beer from anywhere else. But in theory, you could build it in Derby and kind of have connected across there if someone ends up blocking the cotton mill over in Stone, because Stone has that beer thing that any player could just be like, all right, well, I'm going to build a beer in Stone, so your life is more difficult, which I think would be a clever thing to do. I think players that are in beer this game, seeing players in cotton, should be rushing to build on Stone to prevent that cotton mill player from getting that early benefit. That would definitely be something I'd be paying close attention to. Luca's thinking for quite a while about this, so again, I'm going to assume this is on the hand management side, or maybe he's trying to decide what he wants to develop into, because he's already developed 2 beers, and so what do you do with 4 beers at this point? My gut instinct, if you're just kind of playing like a basic game, is I would take 1 off of the iron so that you don't have the level 1 iron, 1 off of the coal so you don't have the level 1 coal, 1 off of the boxes for the same reason, and then another 1 off of the beer, which gives you 5 beers left to build. I found that just developing in a couple practice games that I've played, that just developing to level 3 beer is probably too aggressive if you want to build a lot of beers, but building the higher level beers is of course more points. So maybe developing away 1 of the level 2s is kind of cute. Or maybe Luca's thinking like, I could get really cheeky here. Like if Levi's not going to develop into cotton mills, I could do 4 develops on cotton right now and try to box him out of the market or contest the market. Maybe I can play there faster than he can, because Luca is about to go now, spend the least money and go again. So what if he develops, goes first, develops? That's 6 develops into the cotton market, which he only needs 5 of. So 5 develops into the cotton market, and then 1 other to do something else, and then drop a cotton mill. Well, he doesn't have the money for that. Oh, he needs a loan for sure to do all that nonsense. But doing some kind of like flex develop thing sets him up for a very dangerous contest with Levi, sort of like a chicken game. But yeah, Levi might have just left the window open for a goofy play like that. I know that Luca prefers going into cotton mills, but I don't know that he would choose to contest a player that's already sort of established that. Nope, no one listens to me. No one cares about what I have to say. Come on, people, let's develop. What are we doing? He starts off with a link here so he can build into Coldbrookdale. That could also be build the link, develop, and then he goes first next turn and takes the other cheap develops. That's fine. So he's got some long-term plan with Coldbrookdale here that he's going to build probably at the beginning of next turn. It's got to be that he's building something at the beginning of next turn. Yeah. And now Luca is kind of down in Coldbrookdale land until folks get there. So he says, you know what? I'm not going to do this crazy contesting thing. I'm going to develop manufactured goods. I'm going to develop the iron, as we'd kind of talked about. And he's not going to worry about coal just yet. Developing past the first level of manufactured goods is also interesting in another way. So the first box of manufactured goods gives you a lot more income. The second box gives you a lot more victory points. But the second box is built off of iron, and the first box is built off of coal. Coal needs to be connected to the network, where iron can go anywhere. So that second level box gives a lot of flexibility of just building wherever on the board based on what cards you have in your hand. And given that the networking on this board is going to be a lot of players locked in the north, and Luca basically just kind of playing where he wants to in the south, I think generally you want to have like kind of overlapping networks when possible, because then other players are helping you build those canals. But you know, Luca could build a pretty solid basic network, just a few canals in the south or in the west there, more accurately, which is already connected to that box external market. She just meowed and flopped down. That's why I'm staring at my cat. All right, so we're cleaning up for the round. And I've got to imagine that Luca is pretty prepared for what he's doing now, given how he thought. I mean, he knew he was going to essentially double action here, but he doesn't have a lot of money left. So, I mean, again, it feels like there's some cheap iron there. It should be used. If he's got $6 there, it could be develop. I don't know what he's developing 4 times at this stage. It just seems a little early to go into that. If it was a different kind of game, you could maybe develop the crap out of the manufactured goods. But from what I understand, the low-level manufactured goods are like nearly as good as the high-level manufactured goods, and they just cost less. So they kind of scale linearly rather than a little bit more powerfully than that, on a sloped curve. So not too motivated, I think, to necessarily do that. But Luca doesn't love the develop the world idea, which is fine. I think at this stage, I mean, if you were going to develop multiple times, it would be like boxes and coal. Like it's just not really the strategy that he went in for. Instead, picks up a loan and is going to build something, maybe a box using a cheap iron. Oh, of course, or a beer using a cheap iron. No, he's going to build iron. I don't know what I'm talking about this game. My prognostication's completely off. Everyone wants to get those base irons on the board. They are prioritizing grabbing the iron spots, I think, before the other players. This is an iron industry that just makes it so that people can develop like crazy for free, which they should. Why is no one developing? That's so weird to me. It's going to be very low spending because people are dropping iron early. So folks are going to be more highly developed, I guess, throughout the course of this game. More highly developed in the course of this game. So they're going to have bigger spends for bigger value buildings at the top. Because at some point, someone's going to start taking these irons, right? Like there's no question that they're going to use the irons at some point or another. But I'm suggesting, you spend a couple bucks on the irons so that it's more valuable when you play those iron markets. Like this iron market for Luca is literally just the flip for the victory points and the income. It doesn't do anything in terms of paying money back, which is often, I think, what you want with these industries, to get a couple bucks off of them. All right. We've got Jeff left. No surprise, I'm sure, from my perspective, but I think Jeff's going to double develop here because there's a lot of free iron in play. Jeff could do what I was talking about. Like he could box into the cotton mill market. It's a little risky because Levi's going not long afterwards, and he might just say, "Well, screw you. Let's get into a full-on Cold War about that." But Jeff can also just do kind of a more traditional develop, sort of copy Luca's lead. Develop out those beers, which is just safe no matter what you're choosing to do. Develop out that low-level iron so that when he's playing his iron, it sticks around for the future ages. It's interesting with that level 1 iron. It's sort of the most common iron that I think I've seen so far that folks will play round 1 without having developed it away, in part because if you're building an iron mine, it's usually because there's not a lot of iron available. Or it's not available for cheap, but also because it just pays you money back immediately if the iron market is not flush like it is here. Luca's like, yes, please take my iron. Of course, Jeff is happy to do so. So let's see what he decides he wants to do here. I mean, the other thing too could be, I don't know that Luca is playing at this kind of brain space at this, kind of table, but if you can encourage other players to develop into cotton and then, Levi and that player have contests, that's a pretty funny circumstance if you're trying to like enable folks to get into some chicanery with each other. But Jeff does probably the more rational play of developing away some basic beers, which I think is the right call here. And I would just develop again the level 1 iron and a single barrel. Okay, so assuming, again, going back to cotton, and I just think that maybe I'm overestimating the value of cotton in this game, but I feel like getting in the way of the cotton player and that kind of like northern start, like they just have the most potential for a really powerful canal era where they don't have to do a ton of work because those cotton mills are paired together in the north there. I think it is viable for a player to play a level 1 cotton mill, which costs $12, just for the like the early sneaky sale of it, and for the like income boost, the victory points, they'll go away immediately. But it boxes out the cotton mill player a little bit more. So I think there's just some clever options with that. Looks like Jeff did indeed develop. Maybe he did. I didn't quite see what it was. It looks like he did a level 1 iron and then maybe also manufactured goods. Yeah, that's got to be what it was, right? Manufactured goods, which I think is a very straightforward, basic. Keep the options open and play the basic game. Develop. It's sort of interesting that this game has like, in the experience, the limited experience that I have, it kind of seems like the industries, meaning beer, coal, and iron. If you're playing industries as part of your strategy, you're likely to lean into manufactured goods, whereas cotton mill strategy kind of says like, I'm focused pretty heavily on cotton mills and I'll only do industries to offset my loans essentially. And then pottery just kind of hangs out as an option for those players who are fighting over the kind of core part of the game. And the cotton player ends up playing this like orthogonal game, it feels like. I know it's not actually the case because they got to pay attention to what the beer situation is and are they selling beer from other players. I've not yet had the joy of playing at a table where someone just overbuilds beer, essentially saying to other people like, hey, use my beer. Like, it's great for me. It's great for you. You could focus on your thing. I'll focus on my thing. Sort of an interesting dynamic here. And we see here like Luca's explaining like how you can access networking of iron. So that's again an indicator, just the disparity of experience that we see at this table, which is one of the like funky, it's interesting, it's got its ups and its downs, aspects of the World Series of board gaming in terms of what these semifinal and final games are going to end up looking like. It's kind of fun in that way, and that I'm sitting here talking about this game, having played now a handful of times Brass Birmingham, and I mean like a literal handful. Just lots of Brass Birminghams in my boxes, in my hands here. Yeah, but just a handful of times, and feeling like I kind of know what I'm talking about a little bit, but being sort of surprised to see what the choices are that folks are making here. Looks like David is debating playing in Colebrookdale, throwing down a beer there, and he's decided to teleport somewhere else. So maybe he played a beer card and is a little confused about what the rule is for where you're allowed to play what thing. Like he might have played like a beer industry card and thought, oh, that lets me do this. Or maybe he played Colebrookdale and actually had Derby in hand. But either way, it looks like he is attempting to play a beer. Okay, yeah, he's confused about that's what we see is being explained here. And David has not, I believe, developed his basic beers. I'm trying to remember if David did any developing whatsoever, or if he's on level 1 everything. He built that early iron. Is this turn 3? I think this is turn 3. Yeah, I think he's just built that early iron, so I think he's done no developing at all. So I'm going to see here an additional iron build. Dream of Dreams for Levi. This to me feels like a play that doesn't understand the value of developing itself. He doesn't want to spend $4 to develop his 0 industries. Instead, kind of just pushing up the iron track. And it's great to flip all your irons. There are a lot of points to flip them. But I think the person who really benefits from this play is Levi. I didn't see what David did with his other action. And it looks like he drew cards. Maybe he scouted. Maybe he's feeling a little bit limited on his cards. Or maybe I don't think he took a loan, because he's not really spent that much money, and he took a loan at the beginning. I didn't quite see what his second action was, but let's pretend that he scouted or did something like that, because I don't. Or maybe he developed first and then he built the iron. I'm really not sure. All right, here we see Levi is gonna happily scoop up those benefits. For what it's worth, I think that if David, by the way, is going to build that iron, his other action arguably could have been take a loan, because he knows that, well, I know that Levi was going to take those iron and pretty much immediately offset David's loan as he goes down 3 and then back up 3. So he could have certainly greeted some money just collecting tons of cash with essentially nearly no penalty. I think would have been a viable option for his second action that previous turn if he did indeed not develop, which would of course change the number of iron in play. So I might be talking out of my ass there. I think Levi just develops again. I think there's absolutely no reason not to. Maybe the only thing you're concerned about is folks building on stone up north there, but okay, here we go. So then as Levi is going to develop up to that level 3 cotton mill, it certainly seems like I really feel like he's just a step ahead of the other players at this point in time. He also develops away that level 1 coal to give himself options to open up there. He's not going to worry too much about boxes. We'll see if he considers the beer game later, or if he's just going to use that market up north. The thing that he needs to be concerned about now is he going to build in stone before people build beer there? That's the question that I think he needs to be most concerned about. And it looks like, fortunately, he's going second here, and Jeff can't build in stone. So if Levi has a stone card, that to me would be the number one priority. Building wise, he might not have the cash. But if he has a stone card and he takes a loan and then drops in stone, loan and stone. That's what I always say. All right, so we've got Jeff's going first here. Dave's been the most money last turn. Wow, that's so interesting. Jeff's going first here. And again, of course he's limited on what his cards are, but there aren't any markets that want to be built right now. So he's, I think, just going to build what makes sense. He's got a pile of cash, so it seems a little unnecessary for him to take a loan. So I think it's very reasonable to see him like build or link. It certainly could be a turn where he builds some manufactured goods because they're made out of iron, so he could build them anywhere he's got the cards for it. So like, for instance, a Birmingham manufactured good is completely reasonable because that's very easy to throw a link down to the foreign market south of Birmingham, whose name I definitely know. And I'm just challenging you, and then sell there. The one in the far south there that's connected to Worcester and Redditch, Gloucester, the very, very bottom of the board, that's the wild cell. That one's always interesting because it's a pain in the butt to connect to that area. Even though it looks like Birmingham and Redditch are connected, that central connection there is actually a rail only, so it becomes a lot more zigzaggy. And so I think Gloucester is quite a pain to actually end up connecting to. And given that the players have connected in these ways, I suspect that wild market is not going to be available for selling this round. That's my guess. The amount of work that it takes to build there, you might as well just essentially build a wild elsewhere. Jeff's going to overbuild his coal here, which I hate. I hate it so much. You can overbuild your level 1 buildings. You can overbuild anyone's buildings if there's no resources in the market, but that's really hard to pull off. It happened a lot more in Lancaster, which I have a little bit more experience with than Birmingham, because the markets were shorter. They made the markets much longer in this game, which means you're a lot more incentivized to build those industries in the middle of the way, and a lot less likely to overbuild other players. But I have seen folks do this where they overbuild their level 1 industries, which is entirely viable because you're upping the number of victory points they're worth, and they're sticking around into the second age, which again way ups the number of victory points they're worth. You don't need to worry about building the canal link somewhere, so it's action efficient. But you do kind of cut off your nose to spite your own face just a little bit here. And I don't think that again, I mean, he got $2 back for that coal. He's now just making it again. This is very sweet for Levi, who's got access to a free coal, discounting any cotton mills that would be built up there. And then a beer in Utoxeter. Now I don't even know how to say it. I'll say it so many times I'll be confused now. A beer in Toxeter, Toxic City, Black Country is a totally fine play to essentially make it so that Jeff has somewhere to guarantee that he's got a beer for selling future manufactured goods. I don't know what cards Jeff had in his hand, but I really don't like the coal overbuild there. I think you want coal to be more expensive if you're going to overbuild your own thing. It's only, I think a level 1 coal is worth 2 points and a level 2 coal is worth 3 points, but you can really think about it as 6. So, you could think about it like as a 4-point play. But building a canal is nearly a 4-point play. And I think generally people don't like building canals for points, right? This is not the stage of the game where you're doing that. One of the things that I think is really interesting about Brass Birmingham as a Euro style game is that we don't really have sort of that like building my engine or building my income in the same way. Like ultimately all of it is towards building up your industry, which gives you victory points. And I think that's a very clever part of this design. It's part of the reason why it's is it number one on a BGG now, is because it's very much about like building that the journey of like the structure, the infrastructure you build is more important than getting a couple dollary dues and things like that. So here we're going to see an overbuild on iron. You're not going to be surprised to hear this, but I don't love that either. Overbuilding iron, I think, is better than overbuilding the coal, and overbuilding iron is totally fine. I just don't think in a place where you're not even using all of the resources, the amount of money that he paid $8, got 4 back. So he's paying $4 to up victory points by a fair amount from 3 to 5. But I just think that there's opportunities where the iron goes up a little bit more on the market and then you can overbuild so you get a little bit more cash back. Like, why now? Why is this the time that you need to overbuild yourself? There's not necessarily a rush to do that. He's going to take a loan here, which to me, I think suggests that he doesn't have the appropriate cards for Stoke-on-Trent or Stone, because this is as cheap as your iron and coal are ever going to get. This is a dream time to be building your cotton mills, but he might not have the money. So if he did have them, I think a loan and building them would have been great. Let's say that he doesn't have the money and he doesn't have the cards either. I think personally a loan and then a scout would have been better than loaning and making iron cheap for other people right now. Like, why benefit Luca with some additional discounted iron? If he's going to take iron, it costing $2 is not going to prevent him from doing that. I think what we're seeing right now are players who are prioritizing a game where they see the external market and you think to yourself, oh, the external market is not part of essentially like our engines or our systems that are built into the game. So that's an inefficiency. We're supposed to make it so that these resources are always available on the board because we're spending the least money, which makes sense, right? In a Euro style game, you want to be minimizing those overhead costs. But the difference in Brass Birmingham from a lot of these Euro style games is that these markets are shared. And so shaving a couple dollars off of purchases just shaves money off for every single player. Shaving money off for every single player is the same as functionally doing nothing. So if instead you allow, like Luca right now just got a free iron, if instead he had to spend $2 extra for that iron, and then you build the iron market later, you get paid that money back. It's maybe a question of whether you get to build that iron market later. So there's certainly a is it going to be me component to it, which is entirely fair and might change your decision making around it. But I have a suspicion that there's some sort of there's an efficiency focus that these players have that is more relevant in games that are not necessarily this game. Luca's going to take advantage of that cheap iron. He's going to dump some safe beer and Utoxeter, god damn it, on the board. And then he's going to throw a manufactured good and Cannock, which is pretty interesting. I suspect that means he's going to want to go like Cannock to Wolverhampton over to Coalbrookdale. Why grabbing Cannock now? What's good about that? Some advantages of grabbing Cannock early is that you can then build to that. It sets you up nicely in the rail era to build to that beer industry that's connected to it. So maybe there's a little bit of a long-term plan or play there. But he's now committing. He has to build into Wolverhampton. So maybe he's hoping other players will do something there. Like maybe he's hoping that David will build a rail link into Wolverhampton and opening it up for an easy build for Luca. But that's quite a specific plan of thinking for David, who's not indicated any interest really in building anything in particular, but certainly not building manufactured goods. I think Jeff's single coal there is supposed to sell. I think that might be an oversight because it's connected to the external market. And flip his coal mine. But this is somewhere in the rules where I'm not quite as clear. Like maybe it needs to be on his turn. Who used the coal? Levi used the coal to build the iron mill. So I think that might be an oversight. I'm going to do a quick rules check right now because I'm curious. All right, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong, and that coal does not ship. It seems like from the rules. I don't know if it's some edge case that I missed, but when you play the industry, then you ship to the outer market, and then people will consume coal if they can. So it's just kind of sitting there waiting for someone to use it, which makes me even more bummed at Jeff's play to do so. Fortunately, Jeff will be saved by David's overbuild here, which you won't be surprised to hear me say I don't like it. I don't think that it's necessary at this stage to be overbuilding. I think he can wait for more iron to be used out of the market. I think he himself could be using iron, although he can actually probably use some iron right now, but it just floods the market with iron. How do you take advantage of this as the other players? I mean, one is you can be developing more, although folks just seem to not love developing in this game. Two is building those level 2 manufactured crates. I guess you could be building pottery, but pottery is not amazing. You could be building beers. So yeah, the beers and those level 2 crates, I think people should be like jamming out those industries because iron is so cheap in this game, which is really beneficial for Jeff and Luca, and a little bit beneficial for Levi at this stage. Although he's already developed to what he needs to develop. He's not interested in doing more at this stage. That's going to up Jeff's income a fair amount. If David had not done that, missing out on that round of the extra couple bucks would be, I think a fair bummer. I mean, I guess it's only $3 or $4 at the end of the day, but when you build an industry, you're really hoping that that's what you're going to accomplish. I didn't see what he did with his other action. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe he did do some developing himself because now I see that those crates are available, the low-level crates. So did he do developing and there's still 2 iron on play? It's a little bit hard to see his board and what's going on over there with the card plays and everything, but man, if he developed and then that still has 2 iron on board, that's just a really missed number there. Oh, we're taking a quick bathroom break. All right, let's see if I can skip ahead. 52, we'll jump to 54. Everyone's seated again, so maybe this is the perfect jump. We're on yellow, so it's Levi's turn. He's having just a casual conversation, though. Maybe he's just thinking out loud. All right, let's put ourselves in Levi's shoes right now. Again, stone. I think stone is so important at this point, and I really think other players should try to grab that cotton mill from him. That what I would be doing if I was in Levi's shoes, if I don't have a stone card, is scouting and playing in stone right now. I think that is the play. Also, it's dirt cheap coal. It's free iron. Like playing as many cotton mills now, why not? Saves you a couple bucks. Get on it. Levi's dream situation in this round is to play on stone, play on Stoke on Trent, and then if you're feeling greedy, maybe connecting over to leak. Now, for him to connect to leak, he's going to need to get a third beer somewhere, which might mean playing his own beer. We saw him just play a blue card there. Maybe it is Stoke on Trent. It looked like there was a lot of text on it. So that's my guess. All right, so we got a Stoke on Trent, which is a fine replacement for stone in terms of getting something on the board. I think that does, to me, indicate that he does not have a stone card in hand. And at this point, that's what, $16, $17? I don't know how much money he had on hand, but it's possible that even at that discounted price, if he was truly broke, he can't build another one at this stage. Are you holding stone? Is that card stone in your hand and you're not playing it? I'm going to be so mad at you, Levi. He played something yellow instead to take a loan. So I'm going to assume that he didn't have the money to play another. If he didn't, because it could be leak. I don't think it's Utoxeter because it's a toxic. I don't think that it's one of those. All right. On to David. Everything's still dirt cheap for developing if he wants to get on that plan. I wonder, I don't know if he's developed the level 1 beers, but if he hasn't, I think it's probably worthwhile to get on that. Although, yeah, I don't know what he's shipping. He could play out some manufactured goods. There's iron to play out those level 2 manufactured goods. That would be pretty viable too. Play a Birmingham card right now and drop one of those boxes. I think that's fine. Dropping boxes in Wolverhampton and essentially waiting for Luca to connect through. I think that would be fine too. That seems like the ideal set of choices at this point in time, I think. He's got a lot of yellow cards in hand there, although a lot of those yellow cards are pretty worthless. You know, Kidderminster and Worcester are basically unplayable at this point in time. Dudley is far away from things, although maybe good for him in the long run because he's got his level 3 Iron Industries out. So in the ideal world, he builds his 4th Iron Industry before the end of the age, if it can flip. I'm not sure what else he's considering. Or is he just talking out loud about where he's going to play, where those beers can go? Does he even have those cards? He's got one red card. Maybe he's talking about what beer spots are available, if he's especially if he's deciding to develop beer. Speaking of, sponsored by Monument Brewing, thanks to my partner, we're going to build our second beer because we're in the rail era. We're rocking a Trail Magic Hazy IPA for our thematic drink-assisted facts here. I really enjoy, by the way, that in the Brass Birmingham rulebook, they explain that the reason beer is the like shipping good is just because like people needed to drink beer because the water was bad. Just like as a generic like, yeah, people needed beer and so you needed to ship things. Like, oh, okay. Fine, I guess. Change, please. That's a couple bucks. It's not going to surprise you to think that I think he should use some of those develops. Some of those iron. Yeah, see, this is the awkward thing I think about this kind of format, right? When you're getting into this, I mean, and this is the stereotypical situation that folks cited when they were concerned about playing these games. I think this game is new to David. And you know, he's clearly a wonderful Ticket to Ride player, but may not have played many games of this type even, right? Like if you haven't played Brass, like I haven't played much Brass Birmingham specifically, but I've played a lot of games that do the same sort of ideas as this kind of thing. If you like, if you've never played anything that like manages money on the regular, and then you're going to add in all these like piles of networking rules, it makes for an odd dynamic. I mean, it's kind of a fun dynamic, frankly, but it is odd. It's very odd in a competitive context. I mean, it leads to some interesting scenarios. So he plays coal into Derby. And it's a level 2 coal, so I think he developed away his level 1 coal at some point in time, which makes sense. That's a fine tile to have developed away. But I really think that he wants to be spending his iron right now. He might just not have the cards to support it. I mean, he's spending at least 1 here, so that's great. But yeah, it's just that Cole and Dudley, it's entirely possible that that doesn't flip before the end of the canal era? How is it going to be used? It needs to be connected to something. And then folks need to start gobbling it up. And they're going to be using it for cotton mills, for upgraded boxes. Certainly an iron mill could use it. But yeah, it's just, I think that's a very sad coal mine that is going to go unused. And here we go. There we go. I love that, David. I think that's a great... I don't think he's even trying to punish Levi here. I think he's just playing on a spot where he had a card that allowed him to play a beer. And that to me is even more of an indication that I think that should have been a spot that Levi had prioritized earlier. You can see him doing the head cock right now. Like, he's thinking about it. Because that, I think, got in his way. And it does. I mean, definitively it did. It was a freebie for him. But it was a freebie for whoever. Although it really makes no difference to the beer players. It's just that they're beer spots. And the beer spots are competitive. This is a very competitive beer spotted game because you've got multiple players who are on beer, which I think is the standard in Brass Birmingham. But spaces for beer, I know, is one of the kind of primary contenders. So those dual spots going towards beer makes a big difference in terms of how much space there is available for folks to use along the way here. All right, we move into Jeff's seat. Jeff here is kind of just dabbling in everything, master of nothing, that's sort of like flexed open. He's got the highest income of everybody and a decent amount of cash on hand. I wonder if he's trying to play a strategy where he doesn't take any loans. And my favorite strategies in the brass games are when you have to take one or two loans at the beginning and then your infrastructure just gives you enough income that you can do all the things you want to. The thing is that I think when you fall too in love with that strategy and you give up doing the things that are powerful and good in the game because you don't want to take loans, the game really is about taking loans. Maybe not about taking loans, but it assumes that you're going to take loans. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you, Sweet Pea. Yeah, so that's got to be like... That's got to be, I think, part of the calculus that's going on here is how can I play without flipping? I don't know if he's got enough income to run it through. Like, you're going to have to take a loan. And the thing is, it gets more painful to take a loan as your income goes up. So you have to make those calls earlier. Otherwise, you're kind of like leaving some value on the table along the way here. Is this a box and a Wolverhampton? I like a box and a Wolverhampton. Still very cheap. He has to pay $1 for the iron. So it's an $11 box. And Wolverhampton is legit. I hope that Jeff allows the other players to build the network, or the sneaky thing he can do, of course, is like build a link and then just ship it off and get that free beer there. He, of course, wants to use his own beer. So he's planning on building more boxes anyway. So the sneaky suggestion that I have is maybe irrelevant in the long run. But it is worth noting that it is accessible to him with him being in Wolverhampton and no other boxes being connected to that Western, the long named thing, Shrewsbury off of Colebrookdale. All right, we are on to Red Luca's seat. Again, this is not an industry situation. Luca just wants to spend money. He doesn't have that much money, but he's sitting on zero income. So my guess for Luca's turn is build a cheap box somewhere or build a cheap beer somewhere and then take a loan. It'd be nice if he could get away with not taking a loan this turn, take a loan next turn as his first action. But he might not have the money to make that work. Let's see, a box or a beer would be 7 plus 1 is 8 plus 3. So he could play beer and a canal link, not take a loan right now with the plan of taking a loan next turn. That would be, I think, sort of his ideal turn here. It does put him with 2 beer on board, which becomes a sort of demanding use. Like he needs to make sure that he gets those beers flipped, which essentially says, hey, you need to be building more boxes. And Luca's issue here is that he's kind of running out of space. Like, if he doesn't get that Wolverhampton box build, if David builds in Wolverhampton as a box build, then Luca's got Cannock, and then, like, what's next? Birmingham? So the sort of funny thing here is that because the board, the southern part of the board, is so poorly connected because folks played in the north, those box spaces are just actually so much more at a premium, I think, than otherwise. Yeah, that's funny. I mean, every manufactured goods space is going to require you to build a link off of it to somewhere else. There are very few freebies, and that takes away a little bit of that advantage of the level 2 manufactured good, which is that you can build that box to where the cards in your hand are, as long as it's a place that supports it. You want that in a game where folks have started links off of Derby and links off of Birmingham. There's just a wider ranged network, and this game is a tighter network. I'm trying to remember the ring final canal era because it's been 6 weeks since I've watched that with Luca. But they connected from Colebrookdale all the way to Birmingham, right across the center there. There was business up in Derby. I can't remember if they had stuff in blue or if that was a game that was dead in blue, but it just felt like there was a lot more flowing in that game. All right, Luca, what we got? 5. So maybe here's the canal. He's going to take $2 back. Getting something right. Here we go. We right. Great. That's the link that is not exciting to build, but was essential for him to build. When he built Cannock there, he had committed to needing to build that link. It's good for him too, because now, if he's counting on using that beer over in Shrewsbury, then Jeff has no better advantage towards building out there than he does. At any time, if he wants to build that link and then ship his goods, he can. That being said, again, he also wants to flip his beer. He's also only got 1 manufactured good right now. So it sort of ends up depending on where other folks end up building. I will say this seems like a little bit of like a clunky start across the table. I wouldn't be surprised if the ending scores are just a smidge on the lower side. I don't think anyone's doing anything terribly efficient so far in terms of point scoring, although their costs are very low. So the money management is, right, because there's so many resources out there. So the money management is a little bit more flexible. And I think we've seen players essentially needing to take fewer loans because of it. But what will that mean when it comes to the rail era? It throws out all the rules anyway, so what does it matter? Ooh, double linking. Okay, so instead of building a beer, he's building out to Walsall. He's going to go first next turn. So Walsall, I think, is probably to me is the most interesting space on the board, because very contentious industries, very important industries, and an extremely central but pain in the butt to get to location at this stage in the game. It has iron, it has beer, but they're both contested with manufactured goods. So if you're looking to build manufactured goods, which I think Luca is trying to build there, you're blowing up one of those other very important industries for people to build. Now, Luca might be saying, look, I really want to build level 3 iron because level 3 iron is dope to build at the beginning of the game, but there's no need for iron at this point in time. It's going to take a little bit. I mean, I'm sure it'll flip before the end of the era, But again, it's really more helping your opponents when you build iron at this stage, I would say. I mean, you're helping everybody because you help yourself. It's your points, your score, and all that stuff. So I don't mean to say that it's bad to do it. I just think that there are times where you can have your cake and eat it too a little bit more in this game. And in a game where the economy is so integrated, so shared amongst people, you need to find ways to have your cake and eat it too. All right, where are we at? Back to Luca, of course. Let's see if he does indeed build that box and wall saw. He needs to take a loan. He didn't take it last turn because it's nice to avoid taking it, but he needs to take that loan. My mom's practicing Cascadia for WSBG this year, which is pretty exciting. So it's interesting because generally when you double turn, I think that people usually know what they're going to do right away. But the only thing is that you draw 2 more cards, which I guess can change your calculus in terms of what's available to you or what you're planning on doing in the long run. We are entering round. I wish I had counted the rounds a little bit better. I should maybe start counting them off. Oh, did we pause? We're back. My computer froze. I don't know if you just heard me talking to myself or not. I'm going to pretend that you didn't. We'll maybe mess with that later. Or I'll just leave in the hilarious part of me going like this at the screen. Anyway, I was just rambling that I should call out the rounds. I'm going to guess that we're on round 5-ish. Let's see. Let's bank it off of Luca's build. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things in play. He has flipped 1 thing, so he's taken 1 loan. So that's 7 actions. He's developed twice, so 9 actions. Has he developed twice? Yeah, I think he's developed twice. 9 actions, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Loan, developed twice, 9. What would 10 be? But if he's taken 9 actions or 10 actions, then actually maybe we're in round 6. Here's that loan. If it's round 6, they didn't draw any more cards. So actually, I guess the real thing is I should see if they have 6 cards in their hand or if they have 8 cards in their hand. But what I was trying to essentially get at is, if you're going last and then first, unless it's the end of the round, like later in the latter half, essentially, you draw 2 replacement cards. So it could be that he did some updating there. Display those cards for me, Luca. Are you holding 5 right now? Yeah, maybe we're in round 6. I didn't for sure see his hand, but maybe we're in round 6. Beer? Boxes? It's one of them. Boxes in Wolverhampton. Sure. And he ensured that he didn't spend enough money last turn to go before David to make sure that he could do that, which makes a lot of sense. Those 2 boxes, I have to assume that Luca is going for... if David ends up connecting Dudley to that Wolverhampton mess, then I think Luca's going to try to go for 3 boxes. Because that box in the top left there, not great. It doesn't give link points. It doesn't need beer, which is kind of good for Luca's situation. But it could eat the 2 coal out of Dudley to make it cheaper. I think they're talking about what this is the one point where I wish I could actually hear what they're asking about the rules, but I suspect that Jeff is asking about what happens when this gets connected to the market. Do they ship? Sorry, I'm pausing. I'm just trying to figure out what they're talking about here, and there's no way I'm gonna figure it out. So I just pause. So it is David's turn. There's a lot of people explaining stuff to him. I mean, he's laughing, so he's having a good time, I guess. That's Jeff's I'm making a joke face for sure. All right, but what do I think? So David, I think that coal, I mean, that coal was a mistake, but I think connecting it, it's a lot of work to connect it and accomplish very little from it. I think what he wants to really be doing is throwing out boxes so that he can sell his stuff. Here we go. The judge is putting the thank you, sir. Putting the we're moving forward. It's your turn. You get to make a decision. I think he puts if he has a wall saw card, that's the dream, because then he can throw a box and a wall saw. He's already connected. He knows that Luca or Jeff, probably Luca, are going to connect to a market that can sell. He's got a beer across the board that will let him sell. So I think wall saw is the play for him. He could also play boxes in Birmingham to connect Birmingham down south to, it's Oxford. I can read it now. It's Oxford. That's the external market that we're talking about there. Sure, that's also totally valid. If he has a box card in hand, but does not have a Birmingham card in hand, he could connect Derby to Birmingham and build boxes that way. That'd be all right too, because then it does kind of a 2-for-1 in that it connects his sort of dead coal to the world. Not that Birmingham's connected to the world, but it will be. Gives him some options to play over there. All right, we're getting some action here. It looks like we're going to do the Levi plan. We're going to connect from Derby over to Birmingham. Oh, then he actually has a Birmingham card. Is he building iron? If he's connecting there, I think he might be fixated on building the 4th iron, which is fine. That's his game plan. Like, that's consistent, I think, with what his idea has been. But throwing 5 free iron on here, as you know, I think is sus. I think it'll flip by the end of the era, so I don't think he needs to be worried about that. Every time Levi builds a cotton mill, every time Jeff's building that level 2 manufacturer, maybe he only has one left, so it's one manufactured good. Every time a beer is being built, David is interested in building all those things. So I think it'll be flipped by the end of the era. That's not the concern. The concern is that it's just all this free iron in the market that is not advantaging you as much as it could be. That being said, at this stage, there's just no way that iron is going to be consumed in the amount that David would need to get that card flip. So while I'm saying I don't love the play, the more I'm talking about it, the more I think that I kind of dig the focus of it. Like, if you're a player who knows that you're kind of outclassed a little bit by the experience of the other players at the table, having a strategy and sticking to your guns rather than just kind of like running around, doing kind of more chaotic things can work out nicely. If that's why he built in Dudley, it makes a little bit more sense. But obviously I still don't love that coal build in Dudley. Now this opens up for Luca an amazing opportunity. If he's got a Birmingham card, he could drop Birmingham to build a crate there. And then it's only one link away to connect it to either either network, and it's essentially just the base cost because the coal is afforded by the Dudleyans over there. It's not the one thing that Luca has to be worried about if he does that, though, is does he have enough actions left to kind of play out the rest of the turn? Oh, Levi's got 6 cards. He hasn't gone yet this turn, so we're in round 6. All right. Yeah, because Luca, I guess, only has 4 actions left. So maybe that's actually what I'm saying is just actually nonsense, because Luca probably has to build one more link unless Jeff does it for him. He has to sell, which currently he can sell. If he sells to the outer market before Jeff does, then his beer on board is fine. So that's 2 of his actions. I guess his 3rd and 4th actions could be build in Birmingham, 4th link. That would be viable. The thing that he needs to be concerned about, though, is if Jeff ends up taking Shrewsbury's beer, then actually what Luca needs to do is build another beer to flip his manufactured goods, which frankly is not bad for him anyway, but it would mean that the one that he built in Birmingham is a dud unless someone else ends up connecting it. So sort of in a lot of ways, actually, I think he wants to sort of wait and see what other folks are doing here. He's the only one that has this opportunity because Jeff is essentially still on boxes here. Although if Jeff he doesn't have enough money to do this, but let's just pretend for a second that he did have enough money to do it. If he built in Walsall, the iron one, and then he built in Birmingham, the coal one, he could get away with it because he has 4 actions left after that. I think it would work for him. Unfortunately, he's a little cash strapped, so he really only has 5 actions because he's gonna have to take a loan, I think, at some point to do all of that nonsense. Jeff, again, is in a situation where Walsall is sort of their Wassall. I'm going to call it Walsall, but maybe it's Wassall. Or maybe both of those are wrong pronunciations. Is the card that would be best in his hand. I can't help but wonder if perhaps Luca had, I'm going to say there's 2, but maybe there's only 1 Wassall card, had both Wassall cards and knew that building out there was not so much of a concern. And that it was benefiting other players. That would be a pretty clever reason why he ended up building that link that turn rather than building the beer that I'd suggested. So Jeff is going to do the whole team a favor. I think this helps Luca more than it helps him because he's connecting 2 boxes of Luca's, only 1 box of Jeff's to connect to that external market. Another beer here is fun for him. I think it's a clear indicator that he's planning on building more boxes before the end of the round, though I don't know where they're going to go. I don't mind building the beer. He just needs to make sure that it gets used. And maybe this is sort of an acknowledgement that Luca is welcome to take that Shrewsbury beer so that Jeff can flip his manufactured goods with the beers that he has, which is totally fine. I think that's one of the things that's interesting that threw me off when I first learned this game. It's like, oh, selling first is so good because you get the extra beer off of those. But the thing is, if you sell later and you have the beers to support it, you're just getting the points and the income anyway. So selling first is only beneficial in the sense that it is action efficient, but it is more points efficient to flip your own beer while you're selling. It's certainly better to use the external market beer than it is to use an opponent's beer because you're just strictly helping that player. But hey, it's something, right? Is Levi building pottery? Don't you dare build pottery in Belper, Levi. A cotton mill up there is pretty sus too, because then he has to make 2 connections, but it's a bit more viable. Again, building to leak would just be better because he doesn't have to do so many links. And I think at this point, Levi just needs to acknowledge that he is only going to be selling 2 cotton this turn. I think he doesn't have the actions left to make it work. Looks like we're pulling a coal off the board. So my guess is that he actually is building a cotton mill up there because I don't know what else would take a coal up in that location. All right, so we are seeing a cotton mill. It could be that he thinks that Belper connects. Oops, that's the wrong thing to move. I'm trying to move my face. He could think that Belper connects over to Leek, but that's only true in the rail era, which I hope that's not his thinking. That would be a really unfortunate series of events. But now what we've got is Levi left with 4 actions because he just spent his turn placing a link and then placing that cotton mill. And in those 4 actions, he's got a link from Derby down to Burton and Trent over to Stone. That's 2 of them. 3rd action to sell. He doesn't really need to worry about the beer selling. There's no real contest there for other players. There's also no connected cotton mills from other players. I think this is just, he has nothing to worry about in terms of beer. So then he's got a 4th action available, which might just end up being alone. Where if we go all the way back to what I was rambling about earlier, if he had grabbed Stone earlier, he could have potentially built up to Leek for his 4th action. And if not, it would be functionally the same. There's absolutely no benefit to him for being up in Belper over there. Fortunately, at least Jeff built a beer over there, so those links are worth at least a couple points for Levi. But without that, it would be even more of a nightmare, right? If Jeff didn't have the beer that's worth 2 points for every link there, it'd be even messier. Here's one of the things that's funny about the cotton mill players is that, when you start building out in pieces, you can get into these string of turns where you're just last repeatedly. It prevents other people from doing their double turns sometimes, but prevents you from doing some cute stuff as well. Usually it kind of depends on how those costs end up being strung out. I think I'm probably a little bit too comfortable with like going to a pretty negative value for my loans when I'm playing a cotton strategy. Knowing that they'll kind of like pay itself back. And I like to, sort of like have turns where I'm not spending as much and then turns where I'm spending a ton. But you can sometimes just get into these flows where it's like link, cotton mill. And then, for 3 turns in a row, you're like, all right, well, that's my turn and I'm going last again next turn. All right. Huzzah. All right, here's another crate for Jeff. That crate in Stafford is very interesting for multiple reasons. One is he had to build a link to get there. Does he have enough actions left? Yeah, okay. So he had to build a link to get there. So it's pretty awkward to build that crate. Then the other thing is he's going to have to build another link that connects Stafford over to Cannock. So that means he's locked on what his actions are next turn, right? It's going to be link, sell. Now he's got enough beer on board that he can sell. I don't think anyone's going to steal his beer. There's not enough need for shipping out there that he needs to be concerned about that beer and Derby being stolen from him. Maybe if Levi had found some way to get to 3 cotton mills, but I think not in this instance. So Jeff's sort of locked for the rest of his actions. And he will have essentially flipped 2 beers, 2 boxes, 1 iron mill. Nope, he developed away the iron mill. And then 2 coals, one of which overbuilt, which is okay, but I think a little bit of a weaker first era. A lot of links that he ended up having to build. That link down in Wolverhampton to Colebrookdale should have been a link that connected Stone to Stafford if that was his plan. Because Luca has to connect Wolverhampton to Colebrookdale. So pushing the decision off so that maybe he spends the action to do that, I think would have been a sneakier way of saving an action along the way, grabbing a loan or something like that. Jeff is broke right now, by the way, I think. He doesn't need the money for the next turn. He's very efficient with his money. I just think that he could have used the actions in a slightly different way and pushed the decisions on, because he needs to build another link to Cannock, right? So he could have instead, like this turn, could have Wolverhampton connected, instead of Wolverhampton to Colebrookdale, could have connected Stafford to Cannock. And so he had the actions that would have worked out just fine to connect his links along the way there. Now, the other thing I want to say is I don't even think building in Stafford made a lot of sense. Instead of doing link Stafford build, he could have just scouted built in Walsall. And then he doesn't need to commit to the fact that he's building a link next turn. So he would have saved himself a forced action. And yes, he doesn't get the couple points for the canal link, but he could have opened up his options by taking a wild and building a Wausau that way. Or maybe even Birmingham with the thinking that other people would connect. But I just think that he, being in the position where he's not behind, he's not doing bad, but I think he's a smidge behind Luca. I think he's, make Luca make those decisions. Make Luca make those required connections since the two of you are integrated together. And you might not be able to between, the time that he's played and the end of the game, the way the turn order works and how people are spending money. It might be that Luca goes after him again next turn, finds a way to kind of like sneakily avoid it himself. He's got options. I think for Luca right now, he could try to he goes next turn. He could try to underspend Jeff to go before him next turn so that he can grab that external market thing. I think, does he need it? Yeah, he currently is selling 2 boxes that require 2 beer, but he's only got 1 beer on board. So, he could build another beer and ship that along with his boxes. I don't think there's any reason why he couldn't do that. His money situation is relatively medium. Looks like he could do one thing if I see his money right at 21. So, 4 actions, he could build. I think he's gonna build at least one more thing, which could be a box that doesn't need beer. It could be beer with the intention of not using the foreign market beer. Or both. Could he get away with both? He would need to build, loan, sell. I think he could get away with both. So Jeff spent, 13-ish or 14-ish, something like that. So if he could loan and then build something that costs less than that. Yep. So if he loans, takes a beer or builds a beer in Nuneaton or Burton-on-Trent, if he has the right cards for it. Those are, I think, the only cards that would work. Yep. If he had the cards for Nuneaton or Burton-on-Trent, he could play on one of those 2 spaces with the beer, take a loan. He goes before Jeff next turn. Actually, it doesn't even matter if he goes before Jeff. He doesn't care. Then he could build the 2 coal manufactured goods over in Wausau. Instead, he builds it in Derby. What? Oh. I think I see what he's doing. So he must be very card limited here. So interesting that he built a Wausau and is not building there. Jeff is also confused, I think. So Luca played a Derby card and built the sort of 2 coal thing over there. And then I think took a loan. Yeah, I took a loan with the second one. Here we see him go into -6 over there. So I suspect that he would need to take a loan. And he is banking on the fact that Levi is going to connect Derby over to Stone for him and do that work. So he's actually banking on the fact that he's going after Jeff next turn. But now he's in a funny situation where next turn, if his whole network isn't connected, let's say his whole network is connected. He needs 2 beers to flip the 3 tiles because that third manufactured good he says doesn't have one. So we can use the external market beer if he goes before Jeff. Perhaps Jeff just leaves it because he's selling 2 beers himself. And then Luca. Yeah, it's a question of whether Jeff wants to play nice or not, right? And how this network works. But Levi, I think, doesn't want to play nice. He has no incentive to play nice here. The thing is, he just might not be able to spend enough money to go after Luca because he has to go build, sell So, ideally he would like do one link and then next turn do build sell, and he goes after Luca. And Luca maybe has to do that last connection there, right? We're talking about connecting from Derby down to Burton-on-Trent and Burton-on-Trent over to Stone. That would be the ideal situation. But can Levi even spend the money now? Like, where could he even go to play something else that would do something that gets in other players' ways or annoys them? He doesn't really have any kinds of things to build except for cotton mills. If he has a ton of money on hand, he could build a cotton mill in Birmingham that he's never planning on flipping, essentially. To spend a ton of money, force Luca into the situation where he needs to connect Burton-on-Trent over. But Levi, in order to do that sneakiness, would need to have enough cash on hand to build that and then be able to build 2 links, assuming that Luca decides to not play nice, because Luca flipping the manufactured good is not as important as Levi flipping the cotton mill along the way. That was a lot of conspiracy theory stuff here. We got David playing into pottery on Stafford, which is nice that Jeff ended up connecting there. And if he manages to go after Levi connects, he could sell that Stafford pottery over in the Northeast. The reason that pottery is a good flip. However, it goes away immediately. So it's essentially a single reward flip, and it's the only level 1 building that you can still build in the rail era. So there's really very little incentive to build it now versus building it in the rail era. I kind of think that David is just sort of like looking for stuff to do. And this kind of makes sense, but he needs people to connect the network. It does use one of his iron, so that's probably part of the thinking there. Man, that empty Wausau there is pretty hilarious if no one ends up building there between now and the end. I think Levi is trying to debate exactly what I said. If we could see his money, we'd have some more idea. If he doesn't have enough money, his turns are just build, sell. And then if he's got no money, it's build, sell, loan. So there's no way he can manipulate the turn order he is going now and first next turn if those are his 4 actions. If he has a lot of money on hand, he could build something. If he has the Wausau card, he could... He doesn't want to build that. He hasn't developed his beer industry, so he could develop a beer that's not going to get used and just dies in the spot. He could build a manufactured good that could be an option. I guess he could build a level 1 manufactured good in Wausau and a link. And if that makes him go before Jeff, he could then link and sell, because he could sell to the external market. That's okay, but not terribly exciting. And also not the place you want to be as a cotton player. I'm just trying to think of what else he can do. Building an iron mill in Wausau is just madness. He could develop. He could develop because it's so dirt cheap, and he doesn't have industries set up. I guess actually he could build all of the he could build coal and iron, which is really what you need as a cotton player. But I guess if you want to develop into beer just to avoid any shenanigans in the next in the rail era, that would be viable. But yeah, I'm pretty sure just like it's a loan, build, sell. I don't think he has any other options. He's walked himself into the corner by building up in Belper. And so crafty of Luca to like spot that and acknowledge like, yep, for sure. Like that is what you are stuck doing now. I'm going to take advantage of that. And he used the turn order really nicely. My guess is that Levi doesn't even have the money. Doesn't even have the money to avoid this problem. He goes with the head shake. He's like, no, this is bad. I really love games with Levi in them. I remember from Terraforming Mars because like he's just fun body language to read. All right, here we go. Got a Purple card in there. If he has a ton of money, he could do the Birmingham plan. I just don't think he does. I don't think he's taken enough loans to have a ton of money for what he's spent. I think Levi would be, I mean, it's no surprise I'm about to say this because I'm just corroborating everything that I've said before, but I think Levi would be in a lot spicier position now if he just leaned more heavily into cotton milling rather than the shenanigans with the iron mills. I think he could have a really, really big payoff. And then I think he got sort of stuck locationally. Maybe not. I think an opportunistic iron mill rather than structuring for an iron mill would have been better for him. And maybe he didn't have the cards to like do something opportunistically. That's reasonable. Couple dollars. That looks like a link to leak. Is he building a cotton mill up there? That's why he's shaking his head. He thought it could be the thing that I said. He thought that Belper connected to leak. Takes a loan. So he's going to go first next turn. Got it. So he's not going to connect. This is sneaky. It's not great for him, but it's actually, this is better than my Birmingham play. So, right, I'd suggested he just play a cotton mill in Birmingham, acknowledging that it's not going to flip. I like this more. So if he connects to leak, he takes a loan. So that means that what's going to happen next turn, he's going to build and leak as his first action. And then he's going to ship. He's not going to ship his cotton that's built up in Belper. The maligned Belperian cotton is never going to make it through. But he makes it so that Luca's not going to get through. I think Luca's probably disappointed right now because he did not decide to play ball with him. This is a better play because no matter what, Levi wasn't getting what he wanted. And in the long run, that cotton mill up in Belper is very easy to connect over to that northeast spot that's off of Stoke-on-Trent there that is the same merchants for next turn. They're still going to want to buy cotton up there. And Levi will have a location in leak so that he himself could maybe play towards leak faster. That part doesn't matter as much because he still needs to connect resources there. So that's kind of irrelevant what I said there. He is covering up a box spot up there, which I think is probably the right call. Everyone else had the ability to play boxes. Here we go, gobbling up the last of the iron mills. Fortunately for David, who gets at least his 4 iron mill goal, which is normally a start that I'm pretty excited to see people do. I just think that the rest of the support around it is not quite as good, and it didn't pay as much money as you would hope one of those strategies would be along the way. And I mean, you see everybody has played iron mills out. Well, Jeff hasn't. I keep thinking that he has. It's true. Actually, Luca hasn't either. Have people just not been spending iron? I guess they just have not been developing a ton. I don't know. It seems like iron has not been used to the quantity that I'm like accustomed to seeing it being used, but I also, again, quite limited experience, so take that with a grain of salt. And then you sell. Oh, here it did sell. Flip this things over. Yeah, and then it's a little bit of a bummer, right? He sells and basically just offsets his loans. He doesn't even have any kind of income going into the next round. I personally have found that I like cotton mills and coal more than I like cotton mills and iron, even though iron is sexier, gives you more points and stuff like that. Just taking a lot of loans and then like doing a couple coal to like offset those is very, very convenient. Here we see Jeff connecting. He's going to do his shipping as his next action. Be interesting to see whether he uses both of his beer or if he uses the network beer. I'm pretty sure he uses both of his beer because it's 5 points. Yeah. Yeah, which works out nicely for Luca. Because if Jeff wanted to be nasty here, like nasty, he would not flip his own beer, which costs him 5 points and 5 income. The 5 income is not that relevant because it's like $2 and he would get that soon anyway. He gets 4 points for shipping to the world market. So for shooting himself in the foot for a point, he would prevent Luca from flipping both of his manufactured goods. That being said, Luca might just build a beer and then ship anyway. So I don't think that's a good play because if he has a Nunington or Burton on Trent, or here we go, Wausau on hand, he's got it himself. So yeah, being greedy and rude here is risky and not worth it. And then Luca proves that exact case that he doesn't need to be sneaky. He ends up building this beer here, shipping these two guys out. But unfortunately, he will not get to ship his Belperian manufactured good. And then we're going to see an external market with an unused beer, an external market that gives you 4 points with an unused beer. I think because of the awkwardness of everyone having played things out and connecting. And then David here is just hosed that pottery is not going to ship anywhere. Yep. David cannot ship that pottery because it did not get connected over to either the wild or the east. So that play that was not feeling too great is just total dead play, waste of $18. Has sadly functionally murdered himself. I think that's the kind of play that is nearly impossible to recover from, unfortunately. And it's sad to see because at least he had pulled together his iron strategy, that had come together into one piece. Man, yeah, that's a heartbreaker to watch. I don't know what cards he had in his hand, but honestly, doing something wild or just not doing that, I think it's actually like even viable for folks to like take multiple loans and just go into the rail era with a ton of money. But yeah, just lack of experience, of familiarity with the game, dropping that Cole and Dudley, which doesn't end up flipping, dropping a pottery with a speculation of what external markets it can sell to if other players go there. Like he knew he was going last, but didn't see essentially. I mean, Levi's sort of play up and leak was a very nice sneaky play. Pretty awkward round one overall. I mean, like I said, we went through Jeff's and he has a okay, I think slightly weaker kind of general spread start, walking in with $33. Luca looks like he's got $20 if I've read that correctly. And he's flipped just like Jeff, 2 beers, 2 boxes. And he's flipped an iron mine. Oh, it's a level 2 iron mine instead of a level 2 coal, which is superior to Jeff's situation. Points wise, they both, it looks like points wise, Jeff might be a little bit ahead based on the number of links that he ended up playing and where those links are. But Luca also has an extra box on board that can be flipped in the near future. So Luca, I think, is a smidge ahead of Jeff, but not by a fair margin. Yeah, they're on a pretty similar track. Luca's just a little bit more developed in manufacturing goods, a little bit more developed in iron, but he doesn't have any coal, so he doesn't have that flexibility, although I think all 3 other players are going to be playing coal next turn, so he's maybe just not concerned about it, which is entirely reasonable. Levi has flipped 2 cotton mills and a level 2 iron. He also flipped a level 1 iron just for the benefits earlier, but not for the points or anything like that, which is okay. I mean, I think flipping 2 cotton mills is fine. It's just not as good as flipping 2 boxes and 2 boxes and 2 beer. But that doesn't make him like out of it or anything. I think he's just a little bit behind the other players. And again, because he's playing cotton, he's kind of got the highest upside here. Now, the other thing about this fact that he only shipped 2 of these cotton this round is that means the demand for shipping cotton next round, if he builds all of his level 3s, is that he needs 4 beer to make that happen. He gets 2 free beer from the external market. It is not terribly likely, but it kind of depends on where he builds his cotton mills. Like if he can build his cotton mills down in Worcester and connect to Gloucester and use that wild before anyone else can use the wild, that's one of those beers. But he has not developed out his beers, and taking develop actions in that later phase, in the rail phase, is pretty expensive. David looks a little upset right now. Yeah, and David's also not going to flip his beer. Oof, yeah, he's in a far dead last here. And I mean, there's just nothing he can do about it. Like this is the thing with longer games in general. I think like he is now stuck playing this game that he knows he's lost, and that's rough. So what is your goal then when you go into the rail era, right? Like, are you just trying to maximize your own points? Do you set like a sub goal? Like, I really want to build up to this. So you're just trying to achieve a certain level of kind of like mastery in the game with your manipulation along the way. It's tough to say. So he takes a loan here. Just take loans for all the rest of the turns of the game. Yeah, it's not a good situation to be in. It's hard to watch someone go through that. It's a bad feeling. It is legitimately the kind of thing that if I was playing a home game, it depends on who I'm playing with, but we might stop, right? Like it's one of the players at the table is just playing at a completely different level for the rest of it. And I think a lot of people that I would play with would say, no, I want to play it out. I'm going to get familiar with the cards and the systems. And this is just how I'm going to learn, which is great. But I've also played with some people that it's just, if they're going to sit there and be unhappy for the next 90 minutes, like what's actually the joy of the table? But we're not in that situation. We're in a situation where we're playing a competitive event. And he takes a double loan here. From the arm cross, I can't tell if that's a sort of like a frustrated play, but I actually think in this instance, it's the right play. There's not really much else that he can do. He can't salvage the position that he's got himself into on this board at this point in time. And by taking the loans, at least he has the opportunity to have a bunch of money. And then like, I mean, what you can do in rail era is like, maybe you just have like amazing rail turns. And in a game like this, it is possible, though less likely to be constructed, that players are going to essentially play in such a way that assists you because they know you're not a threat towards beating them. So when you play a beer, if David is the player that's after you in turn order and he ends up double railing, you're not so concerned about that. So you can kind of set up some situations where you're like, all right, this is nice for the player that's after me, but if the player that's after me is David, because of the position that he's in, I can play a little bit more greedy. So as the other players at the table, it's hard in this game to manipulate the turn order to that degree. But when you're in that situation, I think it's something that folks can attend to. All right, I think we're scoring links. I don't think we need to watch them score. Let's do a quick little, I'm going to pause and get us to a better spot. I'll be right there in a second. Oh, whoops. Okay, I found the right time, and I moved myself over so that you can look at the scores, but I am going to recover them in a moment. You can see that the scores are actually pretty tight, which is really normal for the rail era. We've got Luca, who's ahead by just 2 points over Levi, who's ahead by just 1 point over Jeff. Those scores, God, I am so bad at reading this board. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 2. I think it's... Oh, no, that's not right. Whatever number is up there, I think is a smidge on the smaller side from what I've seen. I feel like I see a high end of scores pushing the top right corner of the board. So I think we're down by like, I don't know, 6-ish points because we're in the like mid 30s. And I think usually the high score like pushes 40 or gets 40 in the canal era. So smaller scores by a hair than the normal. And we see David is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points behind Jeff, which is not a nightmare. We see kind of the power of having those iron, those 3 level 2, 3, and 4 iron flipped on the board here. So there is at least that going for a situation. But yeah, very, very tight game all around. Other than that, so we're really looking at the rail era to make our determinations of where folks are going to be at this point. We've got David kicking us off and using some of his coal right away to build some rail links. Great little start for him, just a way to make sure he gets some discounted coal. And building through Birmingham is always going to be pretty valuable. Yes, they don't have beer there that are worth 2 points each, but lots of boxes that are going to be worth, Birmingham often gets filled up. And in a game where a lot of players are going for boxes, I think all of Birmingham is going to get filled up. Frankly, David is interested in filling up Birmingham. So it's just a question of what kinds of boxes go there. Are they ones that are worth 0, 1, or 2 points? Luca doesn't have the 0.1s anymore, but Jeff does. And it's now connected to coal market. Iron's awful cheap, though. Like, that's pretty sweet for people that are building things related to iron. I wonder if David's picking what cards to play. I think he's decided he's playing these 2 rails, but hasn't decided what cards he's playing for them. If I saw correctly, one of the cards he used, I think he used a cotton mill and crate card to use one of those. And I understand why you would do that, because he just got burned in the canal era by those cards not doing what he wanted them to do, right? We saw him try to play that beer card and didn't let him play beer where he wanted to play beer because you had to be connected to your network. The thing is, those cards are significantly better in the rail era where you can build multiple buildings per location. So that would allow him to build boxes on Birmingham. So I think it's a mistake for him to use that card. But when you learn a bad lesson in the canal era about how to play this game. Oh no, he's actually just doing it. I see. Was there a beer for him to double rail? I'm confused now. Or maybe they're just making that exact point to him about that the card is useful because he tried to build it there. It's got to be something like that. Yeah, because he couldn't have double railed because there's no beer for him to double rail with. Certainly not connected to that network there. Yeah, so I think they were just commenting that it would be a useful card. So he's trying to figure out what card to discard for his 2 rails there. After that, we've got Jeff. I think Jeff could build some boxes, I guess, in Birmingham. No, he did double rail. What is going on? Oh, he had a beer, of course, up in the Northwest that did not get flipped in the previous turn. So he did double rail through Birmingham and then build a box in Birmingham. There you go. I'm sorry about that, everyone. That's my bad. I'm just so accustomed to beer not being available across the world. Okay, so Jeff could build some boxes in Birmingham as well, although they're going to cost fair penny because it's 2 coal that he's looking for, and coal's expensive. He could build an iron mill over in Dudley now that it's connected, but an iron mill at this stage is not so exciting with only 2 empty iron there. Could just start kind of networking out himself with some rails, doing some single rails. I think that would be pretty reasonable. If he just straight up wants points, connecting stone to New Toxeter is 7 points right there. So that's just kind of like a default play. Although I'm saying that and there's no coal that connects there. So he actually can't do that. He could build Derby to Nottingham, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be 6 points essentially. And then he could connect Utoxeter to Derby, which is actually even more than that, 6, 7, 8. So if he wants to just go for raw points, he's got basically a 14-point double rail play up in the north there. It doesn't expand his network in a way that he really cares about, but just straight up cashes in on some points. That could be an option for him. He could just start dropping beer in various locations, like a Burton-on-Trent card or a Nuneaton card. That would be fine because iron's pretty cheap right now, and beer, I think, is at a premium for locations. We only have the 2 specialized beer spots, Burton-on-Trent, Nuneaton. I think that's it left for beer spaces. The rest have been snapped up or used in double purposes in other places. Yeah. He's got enough money to make some plays, so he should make some plays. I don't think he's quite at take a loan here yet. Just be happy with his okay income. Which, by the way, at first I thought it was his score because it kind of like had flipped forward, and I was like, "Oh God, how is Jeff behind David? What a nightmare!" But no, that's his income. He's got the highest income up there. And it's not a crazy income. This isn't a game where any player has successfully structured income in a way that's going to fuel their system, which is, I think, abnormal for folks to manage to accomplish that. Did Jeff already go? There's a lot of chitter chatter, gentlemen. This is certainly a round in which building a pottery is viable because you can build that level 1 pottery and just have it shipped. Here's another thing that's kind of a bummer for David is that he built his level 1 pottery. So if he wants to build more pottery, he has to develop away. So it's unlikely that that's worth the actions. So a little bit of a blockage there. But in theory, if someone really wanted to claim that early and fast, they could just drop a Belper card or a Stafford card. That's pretty up close there to Nottingham. Build that pottery and do that. I don't think there's any reason to rush it at this stage, but it would be a feasible option. I think railroads are probably the best bet for Jeff right now. Just score some raw points. I don't think he's rushing anything else. Like, he can wait and see a little bit more instrumentally on the board. I think if you are rushing anything, it's building those beer spaces. He's going to scout right off the bat. That's okay, but you've got a handful more cards that you're about to draw. Scouting on round 1 is not as good as scouting on round 4 or 5 when you have a pretty good idea of what your crafted hand is going to look like for the rest of the round. At this point, Jeff's going to draw another 8 cards before he ends up making any decisions. But if you've got a pile of Garbo cards in your hand and you want to discard a bunch of them, which is what I'm assuming that Jeff just did there, it does... why not do it now if you're waiting to see? So I think that's okay. Kind of depends on the situation there. He seems a little bit stuck about what to do. Let's start thinking about Levi because maybe he's going to have a fast turn. That's wishful thinking, but let's go for it. At some point, no matter what, Levi needs to connect that spot in the north over to his cotton mills because he's the one who's going to ship up there. So he's responsible for making that connection. He's not going to be building beers, I think, ever, right? Like, he just needs to acknowledge that he might soak up some beers from other folks if they build it along the way, but generally that's going to be that. He's low on cash. He might need to take a loan. That's going to put him straight into the negatives right off the bat, put him into a -2 there. So in his ideal world, he's not going to be loaning for too long. And coal's going to be at a premium, so like it would be nice for him too if he could like build the coal and then have those kind of like get consumed essentially over the course of the round. Is this a develop we're gonna see here? Ooh, we're developing straight past 3 and 4 boxes. The level 3 boxes doesn't require beer, but it's no link points. It's pretty expensive to build and it's only okay. And that level 4 box there is great for income, but trash for points. It's like 3 income or 6 income and 3 points. So developing past those and saying, I'm going to build some big boxes while there's cheap iron here, seems like an okay strategy. I think that folks in general just kind of stay on the lower end of manufactured goods. But given that I think what Jeff is trying to accomplish here is boxes and beer. Like that's what his game plan is at this point, if it isn't building links. So I still think that maybe just having built the two rail links that I had suggested would be a little bit better. But this seems like a fine game plan to me, and iron is cheap currently. Looks like David's distracting himself with reading some tournament rules. I never read the tournament rules for Brass Birmingham because I wasn't playing in it, so I don't know. Some of the events had certainly more extensive tournament rule layouts than other ones. And here we see Luca nabbing exactly the spot that I'd suggested for them sweet, sweet rail points up in Derby. He'll probably, if he's going to stick with it, drop one into Toxeter as well. Yep. That's a niner, so six back. And then he's broke. Great. Let's put ourselves in Levi's shoes. So Levi needs money. He needs to build the rest of his cotton mills. He needs to find a way to flip those mills. So it's nicer if he can do it a little bit earlier, snag some beer from people that have put beer out there. And then he needs some coal mines to offset along the way. Nothing's really kind of connected to any of those networks right now. Like in theory, an option right now could be building a link from Derby to Belper and then playing a coal down just to get some money back. I don't think he's at the stage that he quite needs to do that just yet. Having a Birmingham card in hand would be great because he really wants to connect to the south so he can get down to that Worcester-Gloucester stuff. So ideally, maybe not ideally, but a decent play would be to play in Birmingham, which is connected to coal. So he could certainly kind of nab that pretty quickly. I think he's checking the rules of how the linking works with the coal and everything like that. So I like Birmingham as an option. He could honestly just like take a loan and play a Dudley card to drop an iron mine and immediately offset that loan. Doesn't pay a ton of money back, but it could be something just to sort of like stabilize some cash flow at the beginning here. It doesn't require a lot of work on his part. He could do like a Kidderminster or a Coalbrookdale coal mine and then like a loan, because then he'll go first next turn, and then he could build out of that coal mine with two rails to eat up some of the coal from there, allowing him to connect to locations that he wants to. We're going to see the Belper plan. Coal mine here, yeah? There it is. Okay. Can't quite see the cash that folks spent, but everyone spent a decent chunk of change. Looks like Jeff's probably going to go first next turn. From what I've seen. Oh, we lost our David and Levi stream, I guess. All right, he's gonna count out his money, spend back for the coal, and that coal, I mean, right? It's bums him up on the income there, gives him a little flexibility, and paid him back 5, 10, 14, $18. So he spent, I think it's 7. Or wait, did he have a level 2? So it actually would have only given him 5, 9, $13 if it was a level 2, which I think it was. So $13. And it cost him 7. So netted him 6, but then 3 for the link. So it netted him $3 and income, which is interesting in comparison to taking a loan, right? Like by doing those actions, he's given himself a couple victory points. That rail is well worth it for the victory points. So I counted it as a canal, not a rail. So I'm all off on the money anyway. Let's not count the rail because frankly it's going to be worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 points. So the rail is well worth it on its own. We'll ignore the rail for now. The coal cart there was 5, 9, 13, $6 profit rather than $30. Just like rather than $30 in your pocket. But instead of dropping his income from 1 to -2, it bumped it from 1 to 4. So immediately on the next turn, +3 versus -3. So immediately we're talking about $9 versus $24, and then that income differential as it will last over the course of several turns. So I would say that at this stage, the coal mine is probably worth more than taking a loan would be. And nothing's going to stop him from taking the loan as well. The question of like when you pull the trigger on the coal mines in the railroad era is, I think, really interesting because people are willing to take the actions of the railroads and spend a fair amount of money to do them because we're just here to collect victory points at this stage. But you know, at this, like right now, selling coal, I think getting $3 for coal probably is not where you want to be. $5 feels good. $4 is good too. I mean, frankly, is good too. But I think at this stage where it's at $3, it's getting too low. You want coal to be a little bit more expensive because those coal mines just give garbage for points. You know, they get 3, 4, 5 points or something like that. And they cost you your sweet, sweet actions, right? All right, here we see some beer coming into play. Those precious beer spaces. Grab it while the grabbing's good. Does Jeff have the money to double rail here? I think he does. I hope he does. 8, 15, 20. Yeah, he's got the money. So double rail, Belper or Derby to Burton-on-Trent, and then really anywhere. Maybe the Utah-Exeter connection. Utah-Exeter. Could connect, I guess, to Tamworth if he like wants to open up the option to like build coal mines there in the future, just to offset money situations. I don't know that I love that. Yeah, this is good. I like this a lot. Levi then has an opportunity to take advantage of double rails. You know, he's connected to that beer network, and I think he absolutely should. If he doesn't have the money, then he should be taking a loan and double railing. It's going to be expensive for him because he's paying $5 for those railroads, or for that coal for those railroads. But like I said before, you know, that is essentially the that is why people are willing to pay that amount of money to go all the way down that kind of track there. In terms of paying coal, it gets pricey. Where we at time wise? Hour 20. Okay. Okay, so I think he's opening up his options for the Tamworth. I don't know that that's the right call, but I think there's a logic there, certainly, to it of like Cole's going to pay money back. So instead of taking loans, I can kind of take Cole. I've got big income. He's got a couple bucks and just enough income that, if he can play to Tamworth next turn, he can probably avoid another round of taking income, which is basically like making more money, right? So I can see a logic there. I think the Toxeter build is just worth more points, so probably would have just gone with that. But the Tamworth thing is legit. Now, the one problem with Levi's kind of plan in this game, not plan, but structure in this game, is that all of this stuff is northern. So for him to build rail links, it's all up there. So having this Burton-on-Trent card to build coal there, get a bunch of money back, and then use that money to hopefully double rail out of Burton-on-Trent here, that is nice. That's a really great spot to have that. I believe also he took a spot that was either crates or coal, so just jamming up all these crate players is really nice for him. If he's got the money to double rail here, then this is a pretty sweet turn. This is what you want to spend your time doing, which is why I think he probably landed on this course of action pretty quickly. He does have to build out of Burton-on-Trent because he needs the coal. I wonder if he would end up connecting essentially up to Stoke-on-Trent through Stone, essentially just to kind of connect the network, which will ultimately have to go up to Northwesterliesville. That would be an option. Or I could see him, I guess he could build down to Cannock if he wants to like be able to build coal there, but that seems a little sus. It's going to be a long time before he takes another turn because he just spent a lot of money. I don't know if he spent quite as much money as Jeff did, so he's got that, but they're just doing the exciting math part right now. All right, let's clearly got the cash, so it works. All right, let's put ourselves in Luca's position. I guess it kind of depends on where these go, but maybe not that much. Luca's got the level 4 boxes, which are to build, but they're easy to build. They're pretty cheap. I think rails are still of interest. I think he should build the Utoxeter link for the points. Walsall, Birmingham. He could just build rails for points, frankly. I could see him doing a double too. Oh, he's like broke. He's got to take a loan. Loan and link. He could also, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with thinking about the game state based on the players who are behind you. If David was a little poorer, which he's not, you could, for instance, loan and build a beer, puts 2 beers on it, acknowledging that the player who's after you essentially gets first crack at them. But if they don't have enough money, they might not be able to quad rail. Although I guess no matter what, that last person could like double loan, go first, and then quad rail. So yeah, I guess that's always kind of a suspicious play, is to build a beer and then not use them at all. I guess if he builds a beer somewhere where he thinks David couldn't connect to, that doesn't exist because it's basically in Nuneaton. There is some rush to build beers here because those spaces are running out fast. And to that point, actually, building rails advantages folks a little bit for building to those independent beer locations. So I could see one of Luca's builds being Cannock to that beer out in the west there. That would be pretty reasonable. But I think lone rail, and it's going to be like, yeah, to Toxeter. No one can build out of Cannock like he can now, so he's not in a rush. I guess if he wants to like up his income a little bit, he could build a coal mine or an iron mine instead. But both of those are just kind of in the like medium pay you out stage right now. So not the most exciting. And I don't see any spots that are immediately network connected that are very convenient for him to do that with. So it doesn't seem like there's a big rush there. Points, points, points. Yep, here we go. Rail. Well, also, Birmingham is decent because not only is it going to be just about as many points as anything else that I suggested, but also opens up options for him to build in Birmingham if he doesn't have a Birmingham card. That being said, he's not concerned about it. He focuses on that Utaxeter Hecka point scoring spot. Card pitch, loan. Superb. I'm sure I'm best at guessing Luca's moves because we were just having conversation. He kind of trained me a little bit on how to think about this game. But I would like to say that it is because I'm very good and I am making the plays that the person who wins this game would do. Um, who could tell? All right. David, who's rich as thieves. What would you like to do? I think actually the most clever play. Can you build a beer for less than Luca's money spent? 3 and 7 for 10. How much did Luca spend? 9. Bummer. Suppose that Luca had spent just a smidge more. If David could build a beer and then loan, he could then quad rail next turn just out of his beers. That's sort of the dream. His beer could go anywhere. Well, it has to go to Nuneaton, so yeah. But I think that would kind of be the nicest. It would be very expensive because the coal is pretty pricey. He's out of iron, so he won't be building any of those. He could just be building boxes right now. Boxes in Birmingham would be okay. I think he's probably going to be building coal to ship to the market there. Although I think this isn't going to quite work in the way that he wants to. Because there isn't a coal spot that's connected. Tamsworth. If he's got a Tamsworth card, then he's playing that as coal probably. He could connect and then build. I guess he could connect Coalbrookdale to the external market. That's really helpful for the box players. I mean, I guess he's kind of a box player, but not really. He could connect to Redditch out of Birmingham, build coal there, or boxes there. I feel like he's so burned from his first phase that he's unwilling to make a jumpy play here. Let's do a slight skip ahead and see if we can get somewhere. Is that a ship? Sure was. He shipped boxes. What good timing for Jeff to sit down. An early ship of boxes to get the free beer there is fine. The income bump is okay. It's a little unnecessary, but I can respect it. It's the kind of thing where I would maybe consider taking a loan beforehand and then moving back up. with those income books. I mean, he already has a lot of money, but the only way he wins this game is with like tons of great connections. And unfortunately, those have kind of been grabbed up north already. So sort of having a run of the space in the south is kind of his dream here. But yeah, there's a gold rush generally for beer and double railing in the rail era. Looks like he has Stoke on Trent cards, connects to everything so that he can build manufacture good up there. It's not really well connected to the markets, but in the long run it will be, so that's totally respectable. I think we're going to have Luca first, yeah. All right. So let's put ourselves in Luca's shoes. Luca's just getting points. He is not going to be building coal. So he could be building some expensive rails. His coal's kind of locked out. He could be building a mediocre iron mine mill. That would be okay. And he could be building his boxes. He's got enough money right now, but not money to go crazy. But he could build two things up there if the price was right. 20 some? 30. No, he's got nearly 30. Never mind. He's got enough. So he could double rail again. Not double rail, but like do a single rail and then another single rail. Which again, I think one of them would come out of Cannock. I don't know where he could build the iron mine if he wanted to. I guess Dudley. He could connect Wolverhampton to Dudley and then build it there. It seems like a lot of work for something that's only okay. So a link here in Birmingham makes sense because it's just a lot of points. Connects to a beer, so that's 2, and Birmingham is upwards of 4. And then there, oh, of course, there's the other iron mine in Walsall. That's much better. 5 spots. Here's an 11, 12, 4, 12, 16, $17 rebate on your, what is it? 7, 9, $14 expenditure. So basically free to build that iron mine. Yeah, seems good. Get a couple points, get a couple income. Cool. Straightforward, clean. On to David. David's more incentivized to build a coal mine now. Coal mines could be built out of Coventry, out of Tamsworth, Colebrookdale, Kidderminster, but all these spots need to be connected. So I could see a connect in a coal mine. I could see him just kind of spamming more boxes. I mean, I think he's at level 2 boxes and iron's very cheap, so why not? Looks like he might have had Tamsworth though. Levi made a I'm bummed face, so I wonder if he has a Tamsworth in hand too. Kind of in retrospect, going back to Jeff's build out of Burton-on-Trent to Tamsworth, this is why those kinds of like, this allows me to build there, not so spicy, because the amount of money that he spent on that turn nearly ensured that he was going last this turn. And so now other players have been able to take advantage of that connection. And it's not like he's cost himself that many points, right? At the end of the game, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be a 5-point connection. But if you build the Utoxeter 1 and 7 points, so if Jeff ever gets to use Tamsworth, great. But if he doesn't, and this is the first step in implying that maybe he won't be able to, it's backfired a little bit by building that way. All right, quick snack break for me. All right, we're locked and loaded. We skip forward just a smidge here. David is executing his final action for this action. Looks like he's spending an iron of some sort to build, my guess is a crate somewhere. No, that looks like coal. He's at level 3 coals. That's reasonable too. Did he double Tamsworth? Point immediately proven about Jeff's linking there. yeah, that's a couple points, some money for him. And that all of that is good, right? But the point that I'm ultimately trying to make in a lot of this video is that making Cole cheaper, it's now cheaper for all of his opponents, right? Like Levi and Jeff, who are coming next, are the ones who get to reap the benefits of it being cheaper. Whereas what David gets is the income boost, which is nice, and the payment, which is nice, and the points, which are not that great for Cole. So Cole really is primarily used. Oh no. Cole really is primarily used as a financial offset, right? Because it gives so much income that it can bump you way up there, especially if you've taken a bunch of loans or if you're just really on an income kind of based strategy. And it gives you money back immediately, right? It like pays for itself. That's a lot better than what was going on in the Canal era, where it's like, they're not really paying for themselves. They are worth more points in the Canal era, so you're willing to probably take less money back, great, because they score at the end of the Canal era and then also in the Rail era, as long as they're not the level ones. So that tracks. All right, on to Levi's position. Resources are cheap. This is a great time to build those very expensive cotton mills if he's got the cash. Of course, he can also be building some links because coal is pretty cheap, and that's the one that really matters the most. Iron's not going to get a whole lot more expensive. So those are the things that I'm most thinking about. Again, I think he needs to get south. If he has a Birmingham card, slapping down a cotton mill in Birmingham, now is the time to do it. That would then allow him to connect down to Worcester, build another cotton mill down there, and then ultimately connect to Gloucester so that he can get the extra beer for that location down there, which I think he needs. If he doesn't have those flexibilities, I think another legitimate option at some point is that he needs to build that rail up north to connect to the beers up there. No reason not to do it essentially anytime. There's no negative detriment. No other player is going to punish him for connecting up there. So at some point it's going to happen and no one else is going to do it for him. So, okay, here we go. We'll see him do exactly that. So to me, that suggests maybe not having a Birmingham card in hand or just not being too pressed to drop it down. Tamsworth both going to Coles here, does sort of limit the amount of spacing that Levi has. Like he ideally wants to build 3 more cotton mills, ship all 4 cotton, if he can get the beer support for it, which actually, frankly, he might not be able to. So maybe he's really just building 2 more cotton mills and then just sending 3 of them, which would look like, he could build in Leek, he can build in Kidderminster, Worcester, Birmingham, Nuneaton. Birmingham and Nuneaton are not really close to other kind of locations that are important. So I think no matter what, like he's building into Worcester, Kidderminster at some point, and other players are not terribly incentivized to go down there. And he needs to be a little wary. I don't think it's quite likely, but he needs to be a little wary of players building into Redditch and then Redditch into Gloucester and taking that beer for the wild for him. Like, I think he does have a little bit of a race going on here with how those beers are going to be consumed. I don't think any of these players are playing in such a way that they are going to just leave some beer on the board for Levi to use. He might be able to grab it opportunistically, but beer locations left are Nuneaton and then the 2, hidden locales, the two special locales. Was that a loan that he took there, or I missed what his second action was? Oh, he linked up to Leek. So he must be planning on building a second cotton mill up in Leek. I guess I'm saying second. It's a 4th, but it's a second unflipped cotton mill. Craig's got 1 unflipped one right now. I guess he could just build 2 cotton mills, flip those up north, and then just focus on doing other things, like build a pottery instead of building cotton mills. It seems like a waste of his earlier efforts to do that, but I suppose that is a viable option. If he can't or doesn't want to build south, I'm just suspecting he doesn't have a Birmingham cart, which is pretty. Birmingham card is really crucial because Kidderminster or Worcester, he can't build a cotton mill there. Just going to push on down a Nuneaton. That feels like we're now maybe playing a beer card to build in a Nuneaton. Beer into Nuneaton. No, it was a Lincoln alone, I think. But he's going to go first and take advantage of that. And I think he's going to build a beer into Nuneaton, take that last location that's publicly available. Yeah, Jeff is making, I think, fine plays, but he just is a bit stymied in that he's kind of like trundling forward. He's not doing anything, explosively powerful. He's just kind of like trundling to this location so that he can build his next thing. He's not able to sort of take advantage of spaces to like hop, skip, or connect in ways that I think would be a little bit more dynamic or valuable. And also, he would only be building level 2 iron mines, only building level 2 coal, so he's just not benefiting in the way that other players would be. He's going to get into this challenge now of building beer that is going to get immediately consumed for building rails, whereas I think that he wants the beer so he can ship manufactured goods. And I think he's at the manufactured good, the one that he's on right now requires 2 beer to ship. I think it's a lot of points, but he's a little bit stymied by that. If he doesn't build in a Nuneaton now, other players can if they have a wild or the Nuneaton card. I think there's only one Nuneaton card. If he has it on hand, great. Then he's only worried about folks getting a wild, but really anybody can scout at any time. I don't think anyone's going to rush it necessarily, but it's something that he's got to be wary about. It's kind of one of those advantages of the beer spots that are off in the countryside there on the west side of the board. It's a lot of specific money counting. What does 6 do? What does 17 do? I have no idea. Hey, look how smart we are. That's an 11er right there. Oh, maybe it's not 6, it's 11. And then if he knows what's good for him, start using them, right? Coal. He could build to the countryside beer past Cannock now if he's doing a double rail, really pushing that beer thing. I think that would be completely legit, because then what he can do is he can build the boxes that require 2 beer, and on a future turn he can build that countryside beer and immediately sell, which lets him ship those 2 beers that he needs for those boxes. I kind of like that, actually. I mean, it's the way that he's going to execute what he's in. I'm seeing now like why folks are generally skeptical about upgrading or developing the manufactured goods in the same way that they do with cotton. Yeah, Birmingham's also fine. So a fair amount of points there. I mean, it connected to Nuneaton, which already got beer in it. It's valuable points wise. So I totally respect that too. If he's just debating points, I think the 5 points between Walsall and Wolverhampton, I would probably head towards Coventry if you want to build in Coventry. But again, he's going to fall into the same trap of he's about to have, nearly 2 full rounds of people building before him. So those industries are going to get built. It's not clear that anyone's going to build a pottery there. So it almost makes more sense to connect Birmingham back up to Tamsworth if he's just looking for points. Because Birmingham to Tamsworth is 4, 5, or 6 points. The one he's looking at building right there is 5 points. And I think the odds that it will be more, that it'll be 5 points are pretty solid. I think the odds that it'll be 6 points are maybe less. Tiny distinction either way, frankly. Okay, that was a money bagsy turn. Levi. Same situation as just a moment ago, except for coal is just more expensive. I think we're going to see a cotton mill build right now, probably up in Leek. What a nightmare it would have been for Levi if Jeff had built a coal mine in Leek right then. He's got to build in Leek now if that's a place he wants to keep locked. He's got to do it right away. What are we thinking about, Levi? He's counting up. Oh, he wants to decide if he can use that beer. He wants to decide if he can use that beer to double rail right now. But he's cash limited. Like, he can't double rail and build and leak. That's fun. It's an interesting greedy choice. Here's the I think when you are playing the cotton strategy, you've already kind of made the greedy choice by developing up there, and I think you need to make sure that cotton is developed. But this is also the trick. Like, you can't win off of just building cotton. You need the cotton and some support. So thinking about building these rails is definitely legitimate. And if you add money to double rail and build the leak thing, then that's, I think, a no-brainer. I just don't think that he's in that kind of position. If he was going to double rail, where would the rails go? I mean, again, I think that going down to Worcester is helpful. He can't connect there. He has to connect like from way up north. So he'd be connecting like through Cannock and then Cannock to Wolverhampton. I mean, those are not good rails for him. Leak to Belper. Yeah, that's all not ideal. And then again, this is back to what I was kind of rambling about at the end of the canal era. This is a situation where he can say to himself, well, you know what? David's the one who's next. If he's the one who gets to use this beer because I didn't use it, so be it. He needs the extra points, so I'm not so concerned. Whereas it probably feels a little bit worse doing that kind of thing when Luca's after you because Luca's ahead right now, right? So you don't want to enable him to have a good turn because you didn't take opportunity when it was there and seized. Loan? No, that's one loan. that a discard pile check? That was a discard pile check. Interesting. I wonder what Luca's looking for. I bet that's one of those tournament rule things. Is that a Newton? There we go. That connects you over there. It's not as good as Birmingham because, again, like I said, getting down to Gloucester would be really nice. But it does build him that second cotton mill. I don't know why that one is better to build than Leek. I mean, I guess he has the Nuneaton card in hand. That's interesting. He has the Nuneaton card in hand. It's only going to be used for that reason. But it does mean that Jeff is the only other player who could play Cole on Nuneaton, whereas any player could play Cole on Leek if they had the Leek card. This is something where we would have had to seen a little bit more about what folks discarded. Maybe that is why Luca was looking in the discard pile to get a sense of like what they'd want to do. Okay, well, that's Levi. So we're on to David. David's going to take opportunity here for sure to double rail. He's got a ton of money. I mean, I think basically David builds a Cole and double rails. So if he doesn't have a Cole, if he has Leek, playing it there is the dream. If he doesn't have Leek, playing in Cannock is okay. Or sure, we're connecting here to Redditch. That's okay too. I think it's better instead of going out of Oxford to Redditch there, he should go out of Birmingham to Redditch. That's a little bit of a missed opportunity right there. But my guess is we got a Redditch card incoming with some Cole on it. Yeah. And he could build boxes, but I don't think there's... Yeah, the boxes are expensive. Doesn't need to. It connects to his link. What are we looking at for link count so far? We've got 4 for David. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Jeff. 2, 3, 4, 5 for Levi. 2, 3, 4... 4 for Luca. So kind of evenly spread. Certainly some of them with more value than others. But no one's really dominating building rails right now. I think Luca's ones are probably more point rails. Levi's ones are okay points, but have kind of connected his network. Jeff's ones are okay points and have speculated on expanding his network, but haven't really worked out. And David's are pretty low points right now, but can build up. Oh, he did decide to build a box instead of Cole. That's very interesting. I mean, the box is worth... Well, no, I think actually the box is worth fewer points than the Cole for him at this stage. Because I think he's at level 3 or 4 Cole even. Two iron. Is that a develop? No, that's a box. Or is it? Or did he develop boxes away? This is so interesting. He's developing away boxes and Cole? No, he's building Cole. Okay. He's building the Cole and Leek, which is the mess for Levi. Oh, he can't build Cole. He needed to develop it. So he developed a Cole and a box. Sorry for those of you who already saw that. He developed a Cole and a box. He developed a Cole because he can't actually build Cole because he had the level 1. He was locked out of Cole. And then he did that to build in Leek, which makes Levi's life difficult, gives him a bunch of money back. Lets him go first next turn. Yeah. I think at this point, he kind of realizes that Levi is his primary contender at this point. Like, he and Jeff are on similar strategies, but he's kind of got Jeff boxed out on points and infrastructure right now. I don't think Jeff has anything unflipped currently. I mean, Jeff has actually flipped a couple beer that Luca hasn't. So it's not. I don't think that Jeff is out by any means, but I do think that Levi is Luca's primary threat at this point in time. Luca's got great points on railroads, and I'm sure he knows that. So yeah, getting in Levi's way and also getting some cash back with the leak card in hand seems well worth it. A little awkward to spend an action developing at this stage of the game, but it is what it is. And he did develop away a box that he didn't want to build at this stage anyway because it's only worth 3 points. Going first in the next round, I could build more coal just for some money back. He could be building rails just for straight points. He could be building them boxes, although he ultimately needs to figure out how he's going to get the beer, so he also needs to build countryside beer. He can do what I was suggesting about Jeff. He can build from Cannock out to the countryside. Then he could build those additional boxes and use those essentially to structure himself well that way. It'd be very nice for Luca to actually also build his last iron mine. I didn't really see. I did see where he placed the third one, but I didn't kind of like unlock the fact that he's got the fourth one. Those iron mines are worth a lot of points. I want to say it's 9 points for the 4th level iron one. So that's actually pretty legit too. If he's got a Dudley card in hand, why not, right? Or well, he doesn't have a red edge card in hand, but a wild, I guess. He doesn't have a red edge because I think there's only one red edge card and David played it. 1 iron. Oh, he goes for the pottery. Sure. Pottery's worth a bunch of points. No one else has gone for it. So he decides he's going to push it out now. Shipping off his pottery, shipping off his box that he didn't flip from the first era that does not require any beer. Fascinating. So him doing this implies pretty heavily that he's not really planning on selling again this round. And he's not really planning on building beer this round either. Because if he was, he wouldn't have been in a rush to build that pottery and sell that pottery out, because he could just use his beer to sell the pottery out. I mean, beer could also be used to just double rail. So I guess no matter what, the beer is useful. But there's enough space left on the board that he can just kind of be placing 3, 4, maybe 5 point links and just kind of like crawl to the finish line. I think that's a common criticism of Brass Birmingham, by the way, just Brass in general, that the end game is, I think, a little bit less climactic. The like turns 6, 7, and 8 of the rail era tend to sort of coast to a finish rather than explode to a finish because of the way the economy of the game works and space in the game and everything like that. What are we at right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Levi's got 8 cards in hand. So I think we're on turn 5. I think we're at the stage where we're not drawing new cards. I didn't see if Luca drew any new cards, but the deck is empty, so he must have not drawn new cards. So yeah, we must be on round 5 right now. 4 rounds left. All right, so we've got ourselves a scout. Get some wilds up in here. Give Levi some options. Does that mean we're going to see a Birmingham? Cotton mill? There we go. That's the word, Nick. Thank you. I think Birmingham cotton mill is what we're about to see. That'd be his 2 actions. Then it's basically like loan, link to get to the to get to Gloucester, sell, something like that. Well, this is interesting because Levi snapped up the wild and now he's thinking about it. So he knew he needed something, but I guess he didn't feel that he needs to do it immediately. Does he need to be concerned about it being boxed out literally? I don't think so. I don't think that the other players are going to be building enough boxes that Birmingham spot is going to get squashed. So I guess he can be cute and wait, but I don't know what he's waiting for. Like it has turned the corner, I think, that like jockeying for location is a smaller part of it. Oh, he's doing a sell. Those two. Why are you doing a sell? For the income? Does he just acknowledge that he's giving up on doing the... Yeah. So he's only done the 4 of them. Wow, I really thought that building the Gloucester was kind of the plan. I guess with David having built in Redditch, it means that he can connect there and use that. But I feel like David's better off building a beer to do that. I guess he doesn't really have anywhere to build a beer. So yeah, maybe he's just concerned that David's gonna connect Redditch to Gloucester and then ship crates. I mean, I know that one in Redditch is a no beer crate, but the one up north in Stoke-on-Trent is a beer crate. But you know, there's also that spot over on the west that wants crates. No one's grabbed it yet. I mean, it's 2 links away from being connected to the network, but like it will be. Some iron. Couple bucks back. Couple points. That's fine. Where does iron go? Dudley? Or are we just setting against it? Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to play and flip that level 4 beer. That's really your sweet spot. The iron's respectable too. But in order for him to flip that beer, he's got to connect to stuff. Oh, that could actually explain this a little bit more, right? It's not just a Dudley play for the iron and points, but now he can connect down to Kidderminster Worcester, build a beer over there. It seems like a lot of work now that I'm saying it out loud. It's a lot of links just to build an additional beer over there. Might not be worth all that effort. Certainly doesn't come with too many penalties. Now that Levi has flipped his cotton mills, you know, if you connect to Kidderminster Worcester, he builds cotton mills there, like, good for him. You know, he's kind of action inefficient. I mean, he might get away with doing one more, but maybe not at this point. And Luca did snatch up the pottery, so you know, Stafford or Coventry are the other pottery locations, but neither are connected to the network currently. Yeah, I think we're just gonna see a lot of like fizzle out coal and rails for the rest of this game. I don't think there's a lot else going on. Luca wants to play his huge iron mine. Really all of them want to play iron mines, actually. In a way, I actually really like Jeff playing his iron mine here just to make Levi and Luca's life tuffers. You know, it's harder for them to build on the spaces. So yeah, connecting to Coventry is kind of a big deal right now. It's got a lot of those industries that folks are going to want to build. All right, we're on to David. David just wants points. That is for him basically Coles and connects. He might ship to Redditch. He could connect to Gloucester and then ship, as we just talked about. But he's in no rush. I don't think anyone else can really snatch that from him. So he can afford to just kind of create some links now, like Coalbrookdale to Wolverhampton. I mean, I think a good turn for him is Coalbrookdale to Wolverhampton, build a coal in Coalbrookdale. Could totally see that. Right? Because exactly. Ultimately, if he connects over there to Shrewsbury, it's 4 additional points if he's the one that manages to connect there and sell. No one else is currently sitting on any unflipped boxes. So yeah, so that concern isn't there. It's pretty funny how many boxes have been developed away to lead into no further box building. Just one? Bro, you have another up north? Don't forget it. Oh, don't forget it. Is it developing off? Okay, sure. Let's develop off this box. So important. People, I guess, could overbuild their own beers. That could be a thing that they try to do. Oh, did he miss the flip? All right. Poor Stoke-on-Trent boxes. This man is tired. Too much Vegas. Too much Vegas. I'm very curious to see what Levi's going to do on this next turn. I'm going to briefly pause, though. Sometimes you record the last half hour after coming back from a break and forget to press the record button. So you really just kind of talk to yourself for 30 minutes. And then you realize a few days later that it's time to get back into the game. Alrighty. I think we're, if I remember correctly, round 6 here. Kind of closing in on the final steps. Has Levi flipped his cotton mills yet? I'm seeing plus. Yeah, I'm seeing plus income on them, I think. So we're at the stage where he's already flipped his cotton mills. So I think that means he's mostly left dropping rails for the rest of the game. A couple industries maybe. Certainly iron is worth points if he can get it into play. In fact, a handful of players are interested in playing their iron out because it's worth a decent chunk of points, and it's entirely possible at this stage of the game that there's really only one player left who can get the iron out there. Sort of depends on what people end up building afterwards, but when that iron market fills up, there's not a lot of uses for iron at the end of the game. So there might be kind of I think doing that as a priority. Levi gets first crack. David, I believe, has placed all 4 of his. That was the thing that was keeping him in contention. So Levi followed by Jeff, followed by Luca. That might be a priority, is getting that iron industry out. And that can be done in Coventry or Redditch. That looks like it's about it. Unless folks are looking to overbuild, which is pretty... You wouldn't want to overbuild at this point in time, and you can't overbuild an opponent because we're not out of iron. So Coventry or Redditch are what you're looking at. Someone has the card in hand, or if they have a wild. I don't know that it's worth scouting to do that. That seems a little much. But I think it's going to be one of the the healthier chunk of points you can get rebating cash at this stage. Of course, just dropping tons of rails also is going to be beneficial. Yeah, that's a rail that's worth 3 plus probably 2 points, as I imagine that coal and iron will both get built. All right, so I'm going to assume that Levi is either desperate for cash or does not have access to an iron card. Maybe he just played a coal card there. I couldn't quite see what it was when he laid it down. To choose playing a coal mine over playing an iron mine here. Coal mines are worth just fewer points, but they are going to give him, they're cheaper to build and give more cash back at this stage. Difference isn't that big, though. I mean, these are the kinds of things that he's, I think, pretty much doing for the rest of the game at this stage, which is linking and then throwing a couple, freebie, easy industries out there along the way. David, oh yes, he forgot to flip his one box, so he might end up selling at some point. I think it's unlikely that he's going to build more boxes. The next boxes are the double beer boxes, which is pretty ambitious to think that you're going to sell the double beer. Although there is a beer over in Shrewsbury or whatever the western one is. Yeah. He can't build pottery because of the snafu in round 1. So he's pretty much looking at links and coal, I think, at this stage. Coal is available to be placed in Cannock or Colebrookdale. Colebrookdale would be nice if he has, any of the cards for it. It's connected to his network already. Although it doesn't ship, so he might start off by placing a link from Wolverhampton to Colebrookdale and then doing that. I could see that as being a reasonable option. That looks like a purple card, so maybe he is indeed building another box. Because he can't build in Redditch. Or is it a blue card? Maybe it's, there's no space up in the blue area, so that seems unlikely. Spending a coal. Well, if I didn't know that he had all 4, oh, that's just a rail link. Nope, I'm wrong. He's going for it. Building the manufactured goods. I think he does have level 2 beer. So if he's got a plan for building beer, that's okay. However, it looks like the only beers left are the countryside beers, the ones that are connected to Cannock and then they're between Kidderminster and Worcester. Looks like the other one was a loan because he's just getting a little low on cash. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's hoping someone else will build the beer. I guess he can also overbuild his own beer in stone. No, he can't because his beer is level 2. So he can't overbuild his own beer with level 2. I believe. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Yeah, it seems like an ambitious manufactured goods to build. I think maybe just laying rails was a better, Colebrookdale to Wolverhampton and then like Wolverhampton to Cannock or Dudley. I say Cannock because then from there maybe he can build onto the beer over there, so then he doesn't like end up kind of having to worry about someone else building it for him. He can kind of set up a turn where he builds the beer. He can build the manufactured good because I'm suggesting a world in which he doesn't build that manufactured good. So he could build the manufactured good and then on a subsequent turn build the beer and immediately ship. All right, looks like Jeff is maybe going to do what I was suggesting David do. Play some coal here. So again, his money is, if his money is indeed just $15 there, I can see that he's a little bit on the poor side. So coal makes some sense, but I still do think that it would be nice for iron to be the priority, just point wise, just the kind of stage we're at. What does Jeff have left that he needs to do? It'd be nice to flip another beer. That's kind of the most ideal situation for him, I think. And if you put it out there, people are going to use it. There's enough links. It's enough link spots available. But yeah, people are not well connected. In fact, Luca's the best one set up to connect Cannock over to the countryside there. He could do that. I think that would be... I think that would be a very, very reasonable thing for him to do. But if he can get this iron down now, it's just even better because he's got the top tier iron. It's going to fill all the way up immediately. It might just prevent any other player from finishing. Looks like he took a loan. That was a really fast loan. He knew exactly what he was doing on his turn. Keeping up our average clip, Luca. We appreciate it. That's a coal spend, so I think we're going to be right about this. Oh, yeah. Okay. So there we go. Fourth iron mill here. I assume he just had the Coventry card in hand. I don't know if he had a wild that he had to play, but that does the trick. Did Jeff just miss it? Is that what his reaction was? I wonder if that's what it was. I mean, maybe he's like, oh, it's just so good for you. But to me, that face and the putting down the cards in that way says I was planning on doing that. And then he kind of missed it somehow. Which can be what happens when you're playing a game that you haven't played a ton and you're 3 hours into it. Yeah. I think that, the last question that sort of remains here, aside from just kind of like picking up some rails along the way, is anyone going to get cheeky and try to put out more beer? It's a lot of links to get over to the one between Wolverhampton and Kidderminster. Anybody really, not David, but anybody else could spend their turn building rail. Oh, but I don't know that Levi has developed his beers. So yeah, it's basically between Jeff and Luca if they want to go for a coastal beer build. I think in either their position, they should, whether they're planning on using the beer or not, because I think your opponents will use the beer. David wants to use 2 beer, for instance. And now Jeff wants to use a beer too. That beer could be shipped over to Shrewsbury now that it's connected. Looks like Luca might have connected it on his turn. For the points, and Jeff will just take advantage and immediately. So he basically plays the manufactured good and ships. I don't think it's normally the strongest play to like play one thing and then sell one thing. Although in this instance, he does get a 4-point bonus for having shipped there because that, I don't know exactly the number of points that the 6th manufactured good gives you, but let's say that it's like 7 points or something like that, plus the 4 they got there as 11 points. And it's probably cheaper than building 2 rails, which is probably going to be, a rail at this stage is usually 4 or 5 points. Sometimes, they diminish down to less than that. Okay. So David does have a plan with the beer. He is going to double link down straight to Worcester here. That makes a lot of sense. How many cards do you have left, Jeff? Can you tell me how many turns we have? I can't tell if he's just shuffling 2 cards. I think he is. So I think that does mean we're turn 7. So for David, that would mean he has to have enough money to play a beer and then ship next turn. Which if he hasn't paid yet for those rails, he should be fine because he's got stacks of cash there. Looks like they're debating the merits of playing here and there. He's got 3 cards in his hand. So he was looking to see if he has a beer card, which I don't think we saw. I think we saw color in his hand. Two of the cards at least were colored. I didn't see if the third one was a beer building. Luke here's kind of like explaining it. I mean, at this stage it's educational, but he does. Okay, so I'm gonna take that to mean that he has a beer industry card in hand, and then next turn he's gonna build the beer and then ship, so he gets to flip his. Oh yeah, there it is. We see it. Do the money we paid? His beer is the cheapest beer there is. Yeah, okay, so he's fine. That last rail link is pretty sad, being worth a whopping 0 points, but I guess it'll be worth 2 points. Maybe 3 if someone plays like a Kidderminster Coal, which would be reasonable. Yeah, I think Luca could have gone for that countryside beer, but it looks like he just decided to focus on rails instead. I don't think he has enough turns left to make a huge count there. And then, like we said with Levi, all he's going to do is connect and make points. That's a pretty nice one. That's a 3. If it gets flipped, 5, 6. That's a 7-point rail and a 5-point rail. Pretty respectable. More than you, I think, would hope for at this stage. So he's certainly hoping that double box, double link gets flipped. And I mean, it's pretty reasonable. There clearly was a fair amount of table talk there, so I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that it is going to be. Luca here, does he have enough money to rail? Coal's all the way at maximum price. I don't think he's got 26 there. So coal, which flips immediately, gives some money. Rail is probably the play. I don't think he's got anything else going on. And that's, I mean, probably fine. And then where are the good spots to drop rails? Off of stone, you get 4 points. That's okay. Cannock to Burton and Trent is 4. Same with Cannock to Walsall. Birmingham to Redditch. That's the money right there. Actually, that's the one that Levi should have played instead of going to Worcester. And here, Jeff is just showing that he could have done the iron prior. I think that's probably what it was. And he realizes he can't play it here because there's no way those iron are going to be consumed. I was busy looking at where Luca could play. I don't think I actually saw where he did play. But it looks like he didn't build a coal, so my guess is he built one rail and then just passed, essentially. Jeff's counting all the spots, just like we were. Yeah, there's a lot of 4-pointers, but then there's Birmingham. And I don't know how much cash he has. Same thing, depends on his money situation. Probably the best thing he can do is rail. But if you can't afford rail, then coal rail. If you don't have the cards for coal, then rail nothing, I guess. Or loan rail if you don't have any money at all. Take the 4 here. Why didn't we like Redditch? It's 1, 2, 3. Oh, I guess it's only 5 points. It's 3 or 5 points because I guess that one in Redditch is a 0 linker. Sure, say 4 seems fine, but I think based on the conversation, you can count on David to flip his Birmingham box. And hopefully he remembers Stoke-on-Trent this time. added bonus of going for manufactured good here. So one of those things too where it's like you still need to be precise in the final rounds, but frankly, like if I was playing a home game, just like pick up your stack of money and it's like I buy this and done. I think money is a tiebreaker, but I think it's like the third tiebreaker. It's like points, then income, then money, then seed order, something like that. I think is the WSBG structure for it. In any game that has the player share victory tiebreaker, the WSBG uses a seed order to determine tiebreaker. Usually later in turn order gets the win, which I don't know if it was relevant in any of the matches. Actually, it might have been relevant in Luca's Azul final. Azul's a game where I think a tie score is pretty reasonable to happen. So we'll get Levi flipping here, and then I'm sure dropping another rail out for a handful of points in the world. Maybe he's out of cash? Not actually executing it. Okay, and then they're about to go to scoring, so I'm going to move my face off of the score tracker. We'll cover Levi over here. I'll move into the bottom left corner. Yeah, so sort of the way that this, I mean, we already, let's start with Jeff. Jeff went pretty heavy into manufactured goods by the end there. I think he ended up not really getting value of the additional develops that he did. So that I think if he had just instead focused on playing beer a smidge more, he could have cooperated with David a little bit more, and maybe even Levi, to score some additional points, because he was kind of behind Luca in a lot of ways, and he's got to break parity somehow. So he chose to do it by moving heavier into manufactured goods. But I think if he had moved into maybe more cooperative beer, he could have had some options that way. Luca doing a very similar strategy from him, I think just ended up taking a bit more advantage of the circumstances. You know, he managed to get all of his iron out, for instance. Although looking at the link situation, well, Luca just picked up all the red links, so it's a little hard to just tell visually. I mean, Jeff does have a lot of rails out there, which is nice. I actually think I remembered counting this before they started picking them up when I was recording this the other day, and it's close-ish. All the players have a similar number of links. I don't know how many points they have off of links, and I guess we could count along with them. But counting is not an exciting activity to watch someone do on video, so we'll just have to kind of guess, I guess, off of their scores. We see that looks like Luca is down at just past 80 right now. Where is Jeff's purple guy? Oh, we were just counting it. So he's going to pop up to 79. So to me, I think the gap was a little bit in Luca's favor, or maybe it was similar. Like, I mean, they're very, very close in their points, but Jeff might have scored a smidge more on rails there, but not by a significant margin to say that it was really anything different from Luca's score there. This is one of those things where it's just so easy to miss one little link. Those manufactured goods all having like zeros, ones, and twos on them is pretty extra. I think, if I remember correctly, that Lancaster just scores 1 point for everything. They don't get any cue with how various link things score. I think David was about 10 points behind, so we can use that as an anchor to see how good the rail scoring was for him. Looks like he is more than 10 points behind here, so I'm going to say that he didn't rail score quite as well as Jeff or Luca. I think he played a similar number of rails, but a lot of his were in the south connecting to things, you know, like we saw that like Kidderminster Worcester one, which ended up being 3 points. So it wasn't the worst, but he's not up in the north where like all those beer are with their double link points. So he's missing out on 6-7 point links and instead was rocking a lot of 4 or 5 point links along the way. I'm expecting that Levi is not going to be quite on the same par as everyone else either. He did do a decent chunk of rails, but I find in my experience the cotton player tends to have just a more limited amount of cash, and they're not the beer players, so they tend to have less double rails, fewer double rails. So it looks like I'm wrong about that. Basically, Levi keeping exact parity here with the rails, coming at the price though of him only flipping 4 cotton mills. Oh, okay. So he actually, I guess that my assumption is I'm like accustomed to flipping 6 cotton mills. So he actually spent his money on those rails rather than flipping cotton mills. Didn't want to worry about getting the beer, just essentially took the freebie beers for those cotton mills. And we did see how he got stymied kind of by his play in the canal era. Counting up some industries here. Does that for Luca take us to... Can't really read the numbers on the board. I'm not familiar enough with the game. It's 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 23. Buck. Oh, we haven't moved Luca. I'm looking at his income marker. So let's say that's like 25, 30. I mean, he basically scored about 100. You know, he just went around the board the one time. So he's up there at, I don't know, 130, 140, something like that. And we know that Luca wins this game. I think that that's a little bit of a lower score. It depends certainly on the game, but I think higher scores of Brass Birmingham will get in the 150s or 160s. I think you can score very, very high if everyone's kind of like cooperating with each other, but obviously the goal is ultimately for people to win. It's not a cooperative game, so I'm sure people have stories of scoring over 200, but from my understanding, like in a pretty standard game, you're looking at like your $150, $160 kind of score. This game's a little bit lower scoring though, because the players, they boxed each other out, right? Like a lot of competition for iron in the beginning of the game. No one was kind of like getting to specialize quite as much. I think like a lot of elbows thrown in that way. The board was not filled. I don't think that it always is filled. I think it's pretty difficult to fill the whole board, but I think that there were a few fewer industries than I've seen in some games, which to me says that folks are a little bit poorer. Things were just a little bit harder. Folks were, I think, very cognizant of not getting their beer, their shipping stole from them, so they ended up shipping earlier, and those last couple rounds ended up just being sort of more piddling points of plays rather than kind of setting up for these sort of big turns. Ooh, and there we see it. Levi got pretty close there by about 4 points. Yeah, it looks like he's 4 points off, and Jeff is about 5 points off of him. And then David ended up 15 points off of there. That's pretty exciting. And a very quick departure from the table of players that were, I think, the longest semifinal table that was here. So that was our game. Thanks everyone for sticking along with me. Hope that you had a nice time. I did too. Sorry for the cut in the middle, but I'm sure it didn't disrupt too much. It's really heart of the game is at the beginning part, I think, anyway. And we're just kind of closing out here. So have a wonderful night, everyone.